Hello, everybody, and welcome to a bonus edition of Fantasy NBA Today, the Bruski Breakdown 30-team extravaganza, a sports ethos presentation presented by our great partners at FanDuel. Okay, guys, a couple things. One, today I'm suffering from vertigo related to the thoracic outlet syndrome, and if I get dizzy, I might fall. So that could be interesting. The other thing is we're trying a new format here. We're always trying to improve things, always trying to just kind of get you guys the straight dope and have you guys get it as fast as possible. So we're going to do a thing where we've arranged some questions about key players from each team, and we will do the deep dive thing as we always do, and we will cover a ton of information, but it might be a little bit bumpy today. I'm just going to warn you guys, it might be a little bit bumpy. So let's see how that all goes. Let's start. We're going to go alphabetical order today. We're going to start with the Atlanta Hawks, and we're going to talk about Dyson Daniels, which is kind of a spicy topic. I think a lot of people out there are wondering what's up with Dyson Daniels. What can I expect from him going forward? I think maybe we're all past that Dyson Daniels could be a top 30 or a top 20 player. It doesn't look good in terms of rest of season outlook. And I kind of just think that at minimum, he's going to be a top 75 player. And I think if he starts improving, and I know exactly how he can improve, and I'll get you guys caught up on that here in a quick second. But if he does start improving, I think his 9-cat value will get a lot better. Right now, he's both turning the ball over and also hanging out in a section of the ranks where there's not as much differentiation between the players. If he's super productive and turning the ball over 2.2 times per game, then I think the 9-cat rank will actually get better in the process. There's a little bit of math stuff there, but basically, all of his numbers are in line right now with what he's producing. What he's producing right now are in line with what our expectations are going forward, and that's as a top 75 play. The one way that he will be able to improve his overall production is if he can start taking more three-pointers and if he can start getting closer to 3 steals rather than the 2 steals that he's nearby right now. That was always the draw with Dyson Daniels is the high steals number, historic even. And the fact that he's passing up so many 3-point shots really has taken a dent out of his number. So if he takes more threes and he gets the steals number up to like 2.5, 2.7, something like that, maybe then he can start to cross the top 50, top 40. I don't think top 30 or top 20 are in play for him this season. Unfortunately, in a 9-cat setting, I had him ranked very high. In an 8-cat setting, not as much. I shouldn't say not so much, but not as much. And yeah, that's unfortunate. That happens. And I hope that too many of you guys didn't get too burnt out there. I got Dyson Daniels in about one place. Luckily, he fell behind a number of other players that in the leagues that I play that are predominantly 8-cat. Okay. So Dyson Daniels, bad news. Let's move on past that to Jalen Johnson. Now, Jalen Johnson, the question that I've been asked is, do we need to sell him or is he a first-round player this season? I gave a couple hints in the earlier shows today. I really think folks need to strongly consider selling high here. We have issues in relation to his current production, like right now, even in relation to what he's already done this season. He's in a heater right now. He's on a heater. His minutes are up, his points are up, his threes are up, his rebounds are up, his assists are up. This is in relation to what he's already doing this season. His season numbers to date over the last few weeks, all up big time. So even if we say, hey, Jalen Johnson's had a heck of a year and we expect him to keep going, right now he's producing above and beyond those numbers. His valuations over the last month, top 6 in 8-cat leagues. Over the last week, the number 1 player in fantasy leagues. So this is a buy the book, sell high situation. And it's also for a player who is kind of notoriously injured early on in his career. Also, by the way, Trae Young coming back. Also, is Atlanta involved in any of this crazy trade stuff that's going on out there? Right now, Jalen Johnson might return you something of a top 15 player. Absolutely, 100%. I think you got to take that. Even if you say to yourself, you know what, I think Jalen Johnson's going to be a top 6 player for the rest of the season. Take the haircut. Get the haircut. Reduce your risk. And reduce what will likely happen when Trae Young returns is that Jalen Johnson settles back into something of a top 25 position. And that's okay. You know, you will get a top 15 or a top 20 player in return. instead of enjoying top 25 value with injury risk potential, or maybe some even greater fall off potential if Trae Young comes in and hurts him. I mean, the bottom line is that Trae Young's return is going to shave off at least a point, a rebound, an assist per game. It's probably going to chop off about a half a three per game. The minutes are going to decrease. You're probably going to have a small slide in defensive stats. Also, another thing, he's shooting 80% from the foul line this season on 6 attempts per game. He's never shot greater than 74% from the foul line in any season prior to this. So I kind of think he's got a good free throw now. I think just watching him shoot a lot, it feels like this is a shot he's now comfortable with. It wouldn't shock me if he shot 78% for the rest of the season. But just keep in mind, this is a big time outlier. And that is on top of all the other elements that I previously discussed. He's probably got some top 30, top 40 potential in there if it all kind of goes really, really bad for him. And if you can sell and get a top 15 player right now, that is absolutely what I think you should do. It's tough to sell high. It is. It's always tough to sell high, but that's what we're here for, is to make the hard calls. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I got asked a question, is he must roster once Trae gets back? And I think the answer is unequivocally yes. Now, on the season, he's been about a top 55 guy in 8 cat leagues per game. You count all those games played, and he's been inside of the top 30. Nothing in between, nothing outside of the top 30 or 40 for him over the last week, 2, 3, 4 weeks. He's been rock solid. And yes, all of his numbers are up. I think if we assume that Trae Young wasn't coming back, maybe he slides back into the top 50 or 60 and just kind of cruises for the rest of the year. When Trae gets back, I think where I will personally be ranking him is at about like top 100 as a floor. He is really, really good right now. He has control of his offensive game. Defensively, he's doing great things out there. So I don't think they're going away from him at all. I think the conversation they're probably having in Atlanta is what to do with Trae Young, and is he tradable? And, it's been a rocky, bumpy ride for Trae Young in Atlanta since the beginning. So I think they're having those kinds of discussions, not what do we do with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and how do we get him off the floor? So must roster going forward, definitely some sell high potential, but I also don't think that your opposition is not going to be thinking about Trae Young as well. So I think you just probably ride this out. The expectation that Trae Young hurts him is probably greater than the reality on the ground. Another Atlanta Hawk, as we get started with one of the better fantasy teams going right now, and Onyeka Okongwu, should people buy or sell? Right now on the season, performing inside the top 60. He's been a little bit better over the last month in the top 40 range. The thing that's really struck me about Onyeka Okongwu is this guy came in the league as defense only, a blocks and steals guy, energy guy, and he's running around out there doing skilled things. He's pulling off the dribble from 18 feet in tough end of clock situations and making buckets. For the Hawks. Yes. Would he take a hit when Trae Young returns? Absolutely. All of these guys will. It's math. It's science. Okongwu, though, I don't think he's going underneath top 100. I don't think he's going underneath top 80. So the only thing I think that could happen with Onyeka Okongwu is something that could happen to anybody on this team, is that Atlanta gets a little bit loose if they don't want to be in the Trae Young business and gets involved, pardon me, in some of these trade situations around the league. And then if a player comes back, what does that look like? And if it's a big name player, what does that look like? And, to devil's advocate, that situation, if, we talked a little bit earlier about maybe it might be Milwaukee or something like that. Maybe if Onyeka Okongwu is involved in a trade for a big name player, maybe he lands in a place where he's just got wide open territory. So I just think we keep going with Okongwu. I don't think we sell, because I don't think Okongwu has a great reputation out there. I don't think people are hip to the top 40 to 60 value. I don't think they believe in it. I don't think you would get more than, say, top 70 in return. You might not get top 80 in return. So let's see if he can keep it going, because he's kind of made a habit of that lately. Let's get out of Atlanta and let's get to Brooklyn, where we have another interesting player. It's Danny Wolf. I got asked a question in one of our chats. Is he Nikola Jokic 2.0? And of course, that person was kidding. But, it's in vogue these days. It's any big man that can pass and do a little of everything is getting a lot of attention because of the success of Nikola Jokic, and they're getting attention because of guys like Alperen Şengün. And let's just forget or ignore the fact that you have to be good on defense like Nikola Jokic is for this to all work at a championship level, and none of these other guys are. But it's in vogue, and Danny Wolf has, as mentioned in the waiver wire column, flirted with some late round value for Brooklyn here in the last couple week or so. What are we doing with Danny Wolf? I think what we're doing with Danny Wolf is we are not adding in a 12-team league. I think in a 14-team league, if you need centers, I think you can give Wolf a look. And then the hope is that Brooklyn's just going to throw all of everything to the side and decide that they're going to let Danny Wolf try to be a poor man's version of one of the aforementioned players. If that happens, and it happens for a consistent amount of time, I think he might actually cross the top 100 mark at some point in time. He's been a top 155 to 185 value over the last 6 games in 22.3 minutes per game, 11.5 points, 2 triples, 5 boards, 2.3 assists, and just 0.5 combined defensive stats. That's the problem with his game, is he doesn't get you any defensive numbers. He shoots 45% from the field, 91% from the foul line. So basically, he's going to get you points, rebounds, assists, and free throw shooting, and deficiencies everywhere else. I think he needs at least 25 minutes per game and probably 30 to be a standard league guy this season. Michael Porter Jr. shows up in the questions list here. I basically sell Michael Porter Jr. all day, every day. And I do this because he's had an amazing season so far. He really has taken the opportunity in Brooklyn and run with it. He's been a top 25 player in 8 cap formats this season on a per game basis, just out there chucking, playing basketball, doing the thing. And at some point in time, no joke, he's going to probably not want to play. March, April, late February, whatever the injury issue is, whatever the tank concern is, I think at any point in time, you sell for a top 50 player right now. I think you could do that. You get a top 50 player, do that right now, and you'll feel a little bit bad for a month while Michael Porter Jr. is out there doing really, really well, and your top 50 player is a couple rounds behind. But in February, March, and April, your player will zoom right past them and into the fantasy playoffs or into the end of your season, and you will appreciate the fact that you did that. Nick Claxton getting triple doubles. That's an interesting thing. His value's been all over the board this season. This last week with the triple double, a 30 rank in 8 cat leagues. That's obviously lifted, but other than that, he's been performing in the top 100 range this season. And that's where we pretty much expected him to be. I think the big issue for Claxton is the same as with all of the other good players in Brooklyn, is we just don't know what this team will look like in February, March, and April. And if they lose players like Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Thomas isn't playing right now, and I actually don't really worry about Cam Thomas at all. He could get traded. I don't think he's a part of their future. When he gets on the floor, it changes the team for the worse. So that's the only thing I care about with regard to him and Claxton. But as the team, whatever happens, whether the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th player gets hurt and or arrested, they just get really bad really fast. And can Nick Claxton survive all of that and keep it in the top 100 range? I'm happy with the top 100 range for Nick Claxton. Of course, I want more. I actually got Claxton in a few places this season, so it's nice to see him performing well. But it's going to be a mixed bag. I think there is potential for him to play at, say, a top 60 to 75 level as you iron out all the wrinkles. But that's going to be his peak, I think. I don't think we're going to see more out of him. And these big poppy numbers in the assist category, averaging 7.25 assists over his last 4 games, 10 rebounds, 13 points. I think these numbers might get people a little bit too excited. And I just think that there's going to be some buyer's remorse if you think Nicholas Claxton is a breakout guy because he's versatile. Shout out for the versatility and shout out for trying to do something on the floor. If you're not a natural scorer, the next thing you can do with that natural ability is get out there and dish the rock, but I would give him a top 75 ceiling and no more with all of the associated risks. So probably not something you want to buy into right now. Another question comes in, Noah Clowney, is he a safe rest of season play? I kind of think the answer might be yes. He's had one bad game each weekend over the last 2 weeks. That's really slowed his momentum. I think the season-long numbers are pretty informative, and we got to keep this in mind with him. He's a top 175 guy in 28 minutes per game. Over the last 3 weeks, he's been a top 60 guy, getting 32 minutes per game, 18 points, 3 threes, 4 boards, 2 assists, 1.8 combined defensive stats, and above average efficiency in Brooklyn of all places. So the season-long numbers, they don't spook me at all as far as outliers go. Like, I think in that amount of time, probably a top 175 guy. And the last 3 weeks, they're over baseline. They're about 5 to 7% over in the shooting percentages. So I kind of think if he's a top 60 guy right now in 32 minutes per game, what's a peak season long, rest of season ranking for Noah Clowney? I kind of think that's top 80 or 90. So as you're sitting there and you're trying to make, should I add Clowney? Should I add Cal Filipowski? Should I add Maxime Reynaud? who's the ad? I ranked Clowney 20 in my waiver wire pickups column, and probably, Derek Queen was number 1. So you could kind of get a sense of between 1 and 20, how many different players were in between those two. It's because of the lack of upside overall. So it's a good season for Clowney. I'm happy that he's at where he's at, and 80 to 90 absolutely is a valuable number, unless you're in really small 10-team leagues where, say, top 100 is the only thing that plays. Everywhere else, Clowney has been a good pickup, and he's a good pickup right now. It's just the overall upside's not great. Let's get to the Boston Celtics. Questions about Anthony Simons. Is he a lost cause? I think the answer is yes. I don't care if he has a pop game every once in a while. I just don't think they value what he brings to the table in Boston. And I think that he needs a place where he can play 30 minutes a game, have all the offensive run that he can handle, and they have other defenders there to take care of his deficiencies. Another possible lost cause, Josh Minott. Minott had a decent week, actually, this week. He got you late round numbers in 20 minutes a game. He hit about 2/3 of his shots. It was low volume stuff, 8 points, 3 boards, 2 assists, 3.1 cash counters is a big value source for him there. That's steals, blocks, and threes. I think the big issue for him is that Jaylen Brown is on a mission. So it's really hollowed out that area of the rotation. And then Jordan Walsh is probably the hammer that's nailed the nail into the coffin here. Is Walsh is getting kudos all around Boston, but even around the league, people are starting to notice his defensive numbers and what he's been able to do to opposing scorers. And he provides this balance for the Boston squad. He provides them size. The question I had with Walsh in past seasons is he always looked too big, not fast enough, like he was about to tip over out there. This year, it's all sort of worked out for him. The size, it feels like he can switch on to smaller players. It feels like he can bang with the bigger players. A lot of strength, a lot of length. It's all working out for him right now. And he has actually been inside of the top 100. So I just think it's Jordan Walsh's spot. When you listen to the broadcast, all they talk about is that he's a starter and he's going to have to step up and take more shots and take on more leadership because he's a starter. They're not talking about Josh Minott like that. And Josh Minott has some fantasy value in there somewhere, but I think it's going to take something, of an injury to one of those two guys, or Boston, loses a lot of games and they just sort of pivot into the future. And they're like, we're playing the young guys no matter what. So right now with Minott, I don't think you can bet on anything other than a late round ceiling with a likely 175 value going forward. Got questions about Peyton Pritchard, whether he's going to find his way into the high preseason expectations. I think the answer, unfortunately, is no here. He's not getting enough volume. Jaylen Brown getting all the volume, and there's just not enough there for Peyton Pritchard. This season, 105 on a per game basis. He's jumped up into the 55, 60 range over the last few weeks. But again, like a lot of these numbers are a little bit over baseline in relation to what the usage numbers are suggesting he's going to get going forward. I watched Peyton Pritchard film for days over the offseason. I was all about Peyton Pritchard. So was everybody else. Everybody else went a little bit too far ahead of me. I got 0 Peyton Pritchard out there. And I'm happy to have kind of accidentally dodged the bullet, or maybe maybe my numbers were just right on. But unfortunately for Peyton Pritchard, I do think he's good enough to have that extra value. I just don't see it for him unless Jaylen Brown gets hurt. Then it's a different conversation, of course. Derek White, Question about, is he a second rounder the rest of the way? Well, he's been a top 40 guy, just outside of the top 40 in 8 cat leagues this season. The field goal percentage has been the story there, a little bit down. And lately, though, picking it up inside the top 25 range. And I think that this is kind of where he can live a little bit. I wasn't buying Derek White as a 36% shooter from the field all season long. He's been up into the 40s and even the 50 range this last week. So that buy low from a couple weeks back, that hit. And now I think we are in the vicinity of where he can be. Now, I do have questions about Boston, about can they play well enough for him to continue shooting this well? But again, back to Jordan Walsh, I think they have actually found a formula that works here, and it makes sense. Walsh is going to provide a little bit more balance, and you can have White and Pritchard and Jaylen Brown and even Neemias Queta be your offensive guys the rest of the way. As for Brown, somebody I fade every year in fantasy leagues for the most part. I think one year I didn't. His shooting has been great. He's hanging around the high 40s. He's doing it on amazing volume. He actually slowed down this last week, and that's something that I think is telling in a 1-week sample. He's usually taken on the year, taking just under 22 shots a game. And then blowing that up over the last month to 23 and 24, but this last week bringing it back down to just under 20. So maybe there's some hope for some of these other guys, but I think it's just a little bit of a small sample size. I think he is gunning. I think as long as his knees are okay and he can take on the workload, I think he's going to continue to gun. At some point, those knees will probably start to get tired and fail a little bit. And then we can have that conversation about whether these other players are going to, from that point in time on, play at maybe preseason expectations, talking about the Peyton Pritchards of the world. But for now, I kind of think he is a lock for top 40 value. I think he might stay on the court this season. It kind of feels like that's his MO, is to do something of notoriety. I don't know if he's gunning for an MVP or just to be in a top 5, maybe an MVP discussion. Got a big contract and a lot of responsibility. And I think he's been playing smarter basketball. And that's one thing with Jaylen Brown. There's been a lot of predetermined moves relying on his athleticism. And I don't know why that came out, athleticism. Relying on that stuff. But so many times I'll flip on a Boston Celtics game. There was a play last night, late in the clock, 5 seconds, and he knew as long as he hard drove, I forget which big it was covering, he hard drove, and he knew he would get back to a step back 3. And it was pure, and it was the right call at the right time. It was a split-second call that, when you're a veteran who's seen some things that you start to see. So less of the pre-planned stuff, more of the reactionary stuff. Great job, Jaylen Brown. As for Walsh, as I put in the waiver wire column, I had him ranked 24th over there. He's a 115 to 160 player, whether you're in 9 or 8 cat leagues on the season. He's doing it in 21 minutes per game. So now, as he's gotten this new role, he's been a top 40 to 60 value in 27 minutes per game over his last 7 games. The last 7-game sample, it's 11 points, 1 3, 6 boards, 2.4 combined defensive stats, and 69% shooting from the field. So what's weird about him, so he's got a shooting split of 60, 45, and 81 this year. Well, this is a guy that used to be a 40, 25, and 50 to 60% from the foul line guy for 2 seasons. And it's not nothing. It's 500 NBA minutes. But all this efficiency, everything kind of coming together and snapping together and only taking quality shots, he's really morphed himself into a solid fantasy play, and it's better suited for roto leagues. Don't get me wrong there. But the cash counting stats and the threes, I do think they'll play in head to head, and you won't get that dip in percentages that some of the players that get you those numbers, they will hurt your percentages. So I think he's good in both formats. I just the fact that he went from a guy that his shooting splits were terrible, and now he's got one of the best shooting splits in the league. Yes, on low volume. It's just an interesting turn of events there. Let's get to the Charlotte Hornets. Is it a buy low for Brandon Miller right now? I just think on its face, yes, it's a buy low for Brandon Miller right now. He is shooting terribly. The last week, 36%, and it feels like it should have been a whole lot worse. So some return to action, rust. Hasn't played a ton of basketball over the last few years. So it's not like he's just swimming in experience out there. I will just say flat out, yes, buy low on Brandon Miller. By the way, LaMelo Ball, still not consistently on the basketball floor. If that guy ever taps out, which he's known to do, Brandon Miller is going to have all the room in the world to do everything he needs to do. And so far, the team has been not terrible. The Charlotte Hornets, not terrible. And Miles Bridges provides some consistency in the lineup. Con Knipple provides some consistency in the lineup. You've got your low usage trio, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Musa Diabate, Sion James. They're not stealing stats from anybody. So I think he's in a great spot. And I think all those crooked shooting lines, I think I saw like a 2 for 16 in the last game. And as a guy that has a couple Brandon Millers out there, I was like, ouch, please, no, stop. Miles Bridges, he's a little bit of a buy low right now. He's had some quiet stat lines. I think that's what happens when Danny Wolf dunks on you. But he's fine. He'll be back, and he already had a big one in the last game. So right on point there. Con Knipple, is he a sell high? And how high would I rank him rest of season is a question that I've been asked. So he is a sell high a little bit. I don't know if some of the games that he's had over the last week might have scared folks off, down to 40% over the last 2 weeks. And so that is really kind of the only major thing that's going on here with him is, can he continue to be efficient? And he has enough good teammates that I think right now this isn't a top line concern for me. Now, he's been a top 65 value on the season, and a couple of weeks ago that was top 40. A couple of weeks ago I was telling you guys to sell high on the top 40. So hopefully you got your top 75 player and you don't have to worry about this anymore. Because the problem with Knipple is if something happens with Bridges, something happens with Miller, if something happens with LaMelo, that's really all you care about with the Con Knipple stuff. If with each injury that happens, his value counterintuitively is probably going to go down. Yeah, he'll have some stats to accommodate for that, additional counting stats, but really what we don't want him to do is flame out on the efficiency side. And unless you don't care about that, if you don't care about that, then, you hope he's the last man standing because he'll get a ton of stats. But for those of us who care, that's what we're looking at. Ryan Kalkbrenner, question asked, is he a safe rest of season play? And I really think he is. I think there are certain players in fantasy leagues whose stat sets are sort of built to last. I think Ryan Kalkbrenner is one of these players. I think no matter what, if he's standing on the basketball floor, he's going to get some blocks. I think if he's out on the basketball floor, he's going to have a good field goal percentage. Not to mention, there are some things he actually does well. He's not just a human body on the court that can't do anything. He's pretty crafty around the rim. He's got some shot making ability there. He's clearly been thrown a million lobs in his life. So he's got some unique angles that he can work with there. And that's why the field goal percentage is as high as it is, even though it's on very low volume. But yeah, Ryan Kalkbrenner, even if the injury stuff happens, I think whenever he gets healthy, he will just go back to at minimum being a late round guy, but more than likely something in the top 80 to 100 range. And I know his numbers have fallen off. He's sort of been in the 100 to 150 range in 8 cat formats, usually about 3 rounds better in 9 cat formats. So just hang on. Don't worry. In fact, if anything, I would say you might have a little bit of a buy low opportunity for Ryan Kalkbrenner. Let's get to the Chicago Bulls. Kobe White had a decent little start, and then it all started to go south a little bit. So top 100 on the season for Kobe White. And other than that, basically just not a lot of supporting stats, especially defensive stats. He's had 0 defensive stats this last week, just a handful over the last 3 games. It gets a little better as you continue to zoom out on his season, but zeros are not great. We're not expecting a ton from you in defense, in the defensive stat categories, but we need something. His 3-point shooting is down. I kind of chalk this all up to the late start in the season. The Bulls also in a bit of a dip, probably not helping him. And I do think that there is a buy low opportunity. It's a good one too. I think you got a kind of a handful of players at a given time that are good buy lows. Kobe White, a consistent top 50 player when healthy, I believe, kind of no matter what. So if you think that you can absorb some of this injury risk that he's not going to get right, and I don't think that's the case. I think this is just slow, get back to speed kind of stuff. And also, hey, it's also December. Let's be very, very careful with you. Kobe White, I would toss a top 75 player in the mix to get Kobe White. No questions asked. His teammate, Josh Giddey, I think it's kind of clear right now that he's not a first-round player. It was asking a lot for him to be a first-round player. Let's get that off the table right away. But he was getting drafted in some cases on the turn in 12-team leagues as a first-round or quasi-first-round player. However you want to look at that. The free throw percentage is the big issue here. He's at 75, and he needs to be closer to 80. I think that on its own would do most of the heavy lifting to get him into the second round, where I think what we were expecting is that Josh Giddey probably pretty likely to play a lot of games in Chicago as the focal point, as the hub, and whether it was top 15 or top 20 value in an 8-cat league, getting him into the top 15 and close to the top 10, that he would get there. And the free throw percentage is just not there. And it's early. It's a quarter of the season in. He could easily improve from 75 up to 78 or 80 and get you there. So in a dip right now, a little buy low room, I think with the big name, you're probably not going to get any action there, but it's worth a try. The guy that you can buy low on is Matas Bacelis. Now, he's had a nice little week here. He's been a top 40 guy over the last week, and it's been murky and quiet, though the minutes have been there. 18 points, 1 triple, 8 boards, 3 assists, pardon me, over a steal and a block. You know, he's got good percentages. I don't know if there's pop games that, you know, really, really resonated with anybody or not. All season long in the top 100, it feels like a bust pick at some level, and you got your little sign of life, your set wave, and I think you got to buy low here. Again, top 75 is always the magical number, and there's enough meat to the bone to get teams in 150 player leagues excited. You know, you got a player that's sitting in the top 100 with quieter numbers than usual. I think you toss that top 75 player that maybe has a down arrow next to their name in the mix for Matas Bacelis, and then I think you'll get no less than top 170 or probably top 75 on a cumulative level back, coming back in the deal. And if he starts playing a top 75 level, I do think he'll play enough games to play himself into a top 50 the rest of the way. And if you can, heaven forbid, get top 50 out of the guy on a per game basis, and he continues to play the rest of the season, well, you really hit that buy low very, very well. So I like the buy low for Matas Bacelis. Nick Vucevic starting to fade a little bit. Top 70 on the season after a top 100 week. You know, his best segment over the last 2 to 3 weeks is in the 70 to 85 range. So that's why the numbers are hurting. And I just think when the Bulls are bad and they're not winning, and he's an aging player that's also on the trade block, he's been a little frustrated with teammates as well. I think this is your dip for the season. And I think the associated bump that will come will probably be in the top 45 range. So however you want to look at this, if you want to try to buy low on Nick Vucevic, you know, you go to the proverbial top 75 player. There's not a lot of heat on Nick Vucevic's name right now. See if you can get that, buy the top 45 bump, turn around and sell it back. I don't know if that's as exciting as I made it out to be. Ayo Dosunmu, is he a streamer or an ad? He's coming off of a really rough game. I think that the player is good. I think he's a late round expectation for the rest of the season. And with the lower upside, because he's not getting you defensive stats, I think you can move on and off this player kind of as your roster needs, you know, make themselves evident. Trey Jones, this one's way more interesting for me. Like, Kobe White's going to be an issue any way we slice this, but Jones, when he's on the floor, and I think it's because you have other playmakers on the floor who are pressuring the defense, and then in comes Trey Jones with the quickness and a bunch of additional skill. He looks like he's really taken a step forward this season. He's able to just slice and dice through the defense, and he's able to get his numbers. So he's been a top 75 guy on the season. He's sort of dropped down into the top 100, 110 range, and really not playing a lot lately as well. So this is a hidden value. You know, he's available in a lot of formats. And, you know, if you want to catch lightning in a bottle, even if it's for a little bit, you know, dependent upon how things go with Kobe White and Kevin Huerter, Isaac Okoro, practiced non-contact, but Ayo Dosunmu did not, as I get an update right now. He didn't practice to see the doctor for a sprained thumb. So who knows? Maybe they catch a hairline fracture in there and he's out a couple weeks. Trey Jones not playing much. Doubtful, I believe, for the next one. I don't even have the injury update for Trey Jones. I just want you guys to know that there is a good player in there somewhere. Let's get to the Cavs. You got Darius Garland. Is there a concern level is the question that's asked to me. And I think there kind of is. I just don't know what this injury situation is doing to his overall play. Is he good? Is he not good? He's always had this injury risk. Even when he got into the league, I think he had like 5 college games at Vanderbilt before he got into the league. And we just kind of had to guess, is he as good as the draft status? Well, he has been. And then he took a dip, and then they pumped him back up. Last season in Cleveland, the injury in the playoffs certainly hurt his momentum. And now here he is, not healthy this season, not producing outside of the top 150. I called him a buy low a couple of weeks ago, and I've been kind of like sitting here instantly regretting saying that. I don't know if I would buy Darius Garland with a top 75 player, like a good one. A bad one, maybe. Somebody that's completely on the pointing in the other direction, maybe. But I'm just curious if the injury and then even some of the frustration in Cleveland, it was all fun when you had a deep team and Donovan Mitchell was handing the ball over and letting everybody else get the numbers, and everybody, got the accolades, and Kenny Atkinson got, kind of gifted a Coach of the Year award, blah, 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 blah. You guys have heard that a million times. But now it feels like it's all Donovan Mitchell, which is good for us because we kind of saw that one coming, and people are banged up, and now Darius Garland doesn't have as easy of a path to be as good as he was. And at the same time, with them banged up, you would think if he was healthy, they would have pushed him along a lot faster. He's getting 30 minutes per game when he's playing, and he's not yet playing every game. So there is some chance that he's just the corner is right there. We just saw the corner, and we just turn around that corner, and he's going to be back up into the top 50 range. You see players do this all the time. We just saw it with LeBron. He needed that week or two to get his conditioning right. So there's a case to be made for a buy low. I'm just not excited to make it. So I will pass on the buy low, and I will not rule him out for being a top 75 player going forward. Evan Mobley, his teammate, is actually really interesting because most things have been okay except for the foul shooting. And the field goal percentage could be better. And if he's taking a massive step forward, we could see better numbers all the way across the board. But the free throw percentage has been good lately. In the last 5 games, 86% from the foul line. If we want to zoom out into the 8-game mark, 74% from the foul line. I'll take it. I'll take it easily. I'll take it. Now, is he going to be a second round value for the rest of the season? Well, with the 86% mark, he was a top 25 guy. So he needs a little bit of help elsewhere. He's got 20 points, 10 boards, 4 assists, just 0.6 steals, but 2 blocks is not bad in that sample to get him there. But I think a lot of people drafted Evan Mobley to be a top 15 guy. That's where I had him ranked. And I know that I wasn't getting Evan Mobley every time in drafts. So I know a lot of people had him ranked in that area as well. So I don't think he's going to get there. I think it's great that he's getting there. In fact, his 2-week numbers are a little bit better. He's a top 20 almost guy, 74% from the foul line, just 2.8 free throws in both of these samples. So it's a little bit of a bummer that when he's shooting well, he's not hitting or taking 5+ free throws a game. That's messed up. And it's weird too. Usually the opposite phenomena occurs, take more, make more. But I don't think that Donovan Mitchell is going to get him involved in the game plan at the level he needs to be. Maybe a Donovan Mitchell injury gets him there. But other than that, I just don't see the uptick in the numbers we need to see, which is all the way across the board. Or more appropriately, points, threes, assists, steals and blocks. We need to just see all of it all the time in order to get that. It was looking like it was on its way, but it's just not there. Jared Allen, is he not good anymore. Well, I've been predicting this one for a couple seasons, and it looks like we're getting close here. Now he's got the right third finger strain, and that is what it is. And he has barely played in the last couple weeks, so there's not a lot to go on there. I think if he gets that finger right and he kind of has a little mini training camp, I think that Jarrett Allen could easily get back to being a top 50, 60 guy. I don't want to bet against him on the basis of a finger injury, but something just doesn't seem right in Cleveland. Something just doesn't seem right. And we'll see that play out all season long. And that leaves us with the question of what to do with Donovan Mitchell. Is he a sell high guy? Is he got a regression potential? Well, yes, a little bit. On the regression potential, it's very possible. I mean, he's been taking and making a lot of shots. He's up over 30 points per game over the last 3 weeks, 30 on the season. Yeah, he's just taking a lot of shots, and the minutes are high, and that's a risk for him as well. But you know what? It's all exactly what we thought it would be. He's been a top 10 8-cat player per season. He's the number 6 overall fantasy play in 8-cat, number 7 overall in 9-cat. So we're happy. And yeah, if you want to sell high and get out of the way of some injury risk and consider him, anything in the top 12 to say 15 range, absolutely do it. But I think otherwise, Donovan Mitchell's trying to get this season on track, and he's going to take the ball and he's going to do it himself. That's going to be good for his fantasy value. I don't know if it's going to be as good as it needs to be for the Cavs. The one player in Cleveland that's not a question mark is Jalen Tyson. Jalen Tyson, not only is he cooking right now, and that's to be expected. There's a lot of players that are out, but he's been a top 98 cat guy on the season per game. And the 9-cat numbers are even better. So, yay. I mean, Jalen Tyson, he looked good on film before the season started. And the minute he started getting, real run and, he's out there on waiver wires. Hopefully you were able to catch him. I know we were. And he's still out in a lot of waiver wires. That should not be the case. He's just too good. The production's good. Right now, he's a top 50 guy over the last 5 games. Stop what you're doing right now. Add Jalen Tyson if you have not added him already. Let's check out the Dallas Mavericks. Anthony Davis is back and playing basketball. I mean, that's a thing. I got a question of, will he crack the top 24? I don't know if that's where we're at with Anthony Davis. As a player, I think that there's more levels for him to go to improve. I think that the steals and the blocks could be a little bit better, and just around the edges, everything could be a little bit better. The scoring could be a lot better. I think it's going to be a little bit before we know what Anthony Davis's ceiling in Dallas is going to be, because he's not a top 24 player. If you guys recall, even playing next to LeBron James, people love themselves some Anthony Davis at number 5. I had to take Anthony Davis at 8 all over the place, just for strategic reasons, and leagues that have 2 centers. And it's been a humbling experience, but he has first round potential. And I think in Dallas, we will probably see that. So my answer to this question is yes, he will crack the top 24. He's been hanging around the 30 to 45 range in the 5 games that he's played, and top 30 guy on the season in 8-cat leagues in just 10 games this season, just 29 minutes per game in the sample. So I do think Anthony Davis returns to playing top 8 to top 16 basketball for the Dallas Mavericks. Cooper Flag, I get asked, is he going to have a consistent top 30 run this season? Well, we're seeing pieces of it right now. We're seeing top 40 to 60 range Cooper Flag. And that is really, really nice, because he looked like a guy with a shoulder injury that was going to be playing top 100 ball on a team that's got all sorts of issues with it. And when you're the number 1 overall pick on a bad team and your shoulder's messed up, that starts looking bad real quick. So the fact that he's powered through that Anthony Davis is back, that Ryan Nembhard's there to help dole out the basketball, lots of different things going better in Dallas now that all the drama and the trauma has kind of subsided. Why didn't you do this in the offseason, Mavs? Like, it's just, come on, guys. Anyway, Cooper Flag, I think if you wanted to throw a dart at his rest of season value and feel good about it, it probably should be in that top 40 to 60 range that we see right here. A lot of the stuff that you see about Cooper Flag getting drafted in the 2nd and the 3rd rounds in fantasy leagues comes from the what if factor. What if he's as good as Kyrie Irving was, in his rookie season, or, these rookies that you see. I mean, what if he's as good as Con Knipple? This is the stuff you ask about a guy you don't know how the stats translate in the NBA. Every now and then there's a good rookie, and Cooper Flagg looked on film like he was a good rookie, but he needs the cash counting stats to be there. Luckily, we've seen something of an increase in those lately. He's getting you a block per game in his last 4 games. He's getting you a steal and a quarter over the last 4 games. But the blocks are the big one, and those are the more valuable of the 2 categories. And free throws been up. Everything's up right now for Cooper Flagg, and he's going to finally get some like real learning under his belt. All this, Anthony Davis off the floor, and you got Brandon Williams playing point guard. It's just let the guy learn. And if you're going to target, I think probably top 50 would be your ROI target for Cooper Flagg. I don't think you're going to get a deal made, but if people are looking at his season-long numbers or just kind of generally disappointed with Cooper Flagg, maybe they'll part with Flagg for like a top 60 player. And if you really want to try to have some rookie upside with Cooper Flagg, and a top 60 deal presents itself to you where you got to give away a top 60, I think just do it for the fun factor. Keep an eye on the shoulder, though. If you start to see the shoulder stuff going on, maybe tap the brakes. Najee Marshall, should he be on rosters? I think the answer is unequivocally yes. Right now, he's been about a top 80 to 90 guy. Doing the Najee Marshall stuff that I was telling you guys about for weeks, and then it wasn't happening. And then you had to just kind of ask yourself, well, maybe it will happen. Well, it's happening. And it's because Najee Marshall is a pretty good complementary scorer that they actually need a player like him on the floor right now. So he's checking a box. He's fulfilling a role. If you want to zoom out on his entire body of work, he's a top 140 guy in 28 minutes per game. I kind of think that's his floor. I think the stuff that we're seeing right now, though, really highlights what he does when he's playing well and when the Mavs are utilizing him the best way that they can. That's when you start to see top 75 or top 100 Najee Marshall. And that's where we can, throw a dart for the next couple of weeks here is where he will produce. And the good news is I don't see Dallas is needing to make a whole lot of changes in the current version of what they are. They got the bad news with Derek Lively. Danny Gafford is banged up. They know that. They know that they are Anthony Davis, Cooper Flagg, Najee Marshall, Ryan Nembhard, PJ Washington, and a couple other players. And they can just kind of build around that. And Najee Marshall might be a consistent top 100 value for the next 3 or 4 weeks before something else happens. So that's cool. PJ Washington, I will say, I kind of got no idea with PJ Washington. I am salivating over his top 15 to 20 numbers over the last 3 games. It's 3 games, but he plays a ton of minutes. If you don't care about the efficiencies, he is so much better than if you do. But if you don't care about if you care about the efficiencies, the 44% from the field on a high-ish volume, the 68% from the foul line on a high-ish volume, the turnovers, it just, and so it's a tale of 2 formats and head-to-head formats. If you who punt all that stuff, you love PJ Washington, and there's really nothing stopping him except for injuries. So I don't know what to tell you other than it's going to be all over the board. It'll be fun. And if you don't care about efficiencies, you're going to have a party. Ryan Nembhard is way more important to talk about. Ryan Nembhard is one of the tougher evaluations you're going to find. Not the toughest, but undersized. He's playing on a team that's got big old things happening with it. He's just got like 200 minutes of game film on a 2-way deal. You just get Anthony Davis back and you got Cooper Flagg hanging out there. He also gets you no defensive stats. So you're relying on this high volume. We've seen that kind of claw back a little bit over the last couple games with his minutes in the high 20s, so can he do this? Can he actually pull it off? I think the player fits Dallas really, really well. I said it on the earlier show is he's playing with a lot of bigs that are playmakers. So they do a lot of different things well. They're kind of like knights on a chessboard. They can hop in a little L shape and do their thing. But they don't have a streaky bishop, or a rook, or let's end the chess analogies now because I don't really know what I'm talking about. He's zigzaggy and very smart with the basketball. So he knows the tempo. He knows who to get the ball to. That's why his assist numbers are so great. I kind of think he's the perfect fit for this team. So I like him. And I think he's a good basketball player. I think these size issues will be a longer term question for him to figure out at the NBA level. But, looking at this recent surge, we'll look and see a 7-game sample brings him inside the top 100 at just 25 minutes per game. So I kind of think that's what we might look at as a good case scenario for him going forward. 25 minutes per game inside the top 100. Hey, that's going to play in a lot of fantasy leagues. So I like that. I also like the fact that if we don't get over our skis, we can enjoy the top 100 and then know that there could be some more there. He was a top 50 guy in 29 minutes, 16 and 8, 69% shooting. That's going to come back, but it's not a heavy 69%. It's probably, if that number normalizes, he's got top 75 potential for you. So he's a top 50 or probably top 75 or a top 100 guy for you in 8 or 9 cat leagues. And Brandon Williams hasn't really done anything this season. So I don't really think he's the answer to what ails them. And yeah, they might do 26 minutes for Nembhard and 22 minutes for Brandon Williams and kind of call it a day or change based on matchups and stuff like that. But I think with Nembhard, unless he completely falls off, which we got very little sample size to work with here, unless he falls off, and I don't think he will, I think you're looking at a top 100 player the rest of the season. So that's great. That's great. We'll take that all day long. Let's get out of Dallas and into Denver. I kind of quickly or too quickly berated myself for not being high enough on Cam Johnson and Peyton Watson. And the things that I was worried about happened. So I just need to be a little bit more patient with myself, it appears. Cam Johnson outside of the top 150 over the last week. Pretty sure Peyton Watson, he's a little bit better. He's back at the top 85 this last week. But, it's the things with them. It's the efficiencies, the lack of defensive stats in the case of Cam Johnson. 39% for the field over the last 3 games for Cam. These kind of, standing shooters, if they don't get the ball in the right place, or the offense doesn't find them and they get themselves into a little bit of a funk, the value can go south real quick. With Peyton Watson, same thing, 42% from the field. I've really enjoyed his foul shooting this season. So there's a little bit of a balance to the percentages issue, but defensive stats, 0.67 steals, a little bit down. He did get you some blocks. That's what saved him over the last, 3 games, but not enough scoring. So it's just something's not enough with those 2 guys. And I think a lot of people are asking me, well, I picked up Peyton Watson and I picked up Cam Johnson while they were hot and they were top 50 guys. What about like Kyle Filipowski? Well, no, I would drop Peyton Watson and go add Kyle Filipowski for 2 reasons. One, Kyle Filipowski, if he ever gets cut loose, could outproduce Peyton Watson right now in the current situation that they're both in. So there's that. But once all the players come back for Denver, and once we're into February, March, and April, that's Kyle Filipowski season. It's not Peyton Watson season. So if you have fantasy playoffs, I want Kyle Filipowski. And if you want rest of season value, I want Kyle Filipowski. And it doesn't feel right, but sometimes you got to zig when everybody else is zagging. As for Aaron Gordon, I had him ranked number 29 in my waiver wire ranks, just in case you're kind of curious about when it's time to go out and pick up Aaron Gordon. Let's get to the Detroit Pistons. Ausar Thompson, talked about him last show. I don't think it's happening for him this season. Like, the numbers are what they are. The free throw number's bad. It is what it is. That's dragging him back. The other numbers are kind of there, but not enough. If we took free throw out of the equation, he'd probably be like a top 100 player. But problem is, people were drafting Ausar Thompson in the 5th round. I got him in like the 6th or the 5th. I can't remember which one. A couple times he fit the build. You looked at him and you said, oh, this guy's about to be just like his brother. He's about to take off. He's physically just at a place that nobody else can be. And that's true, but mentally, he's just not there. He's making mistakes all over the court. His teammates are on him, like standing in the wrong places. I mean, stuff that you got to think at this level this year, he would be past some of this stuff. So his minutes are down. The Pistons are getting zoned up 3 straight games. That's pretty unheard of, and he's one of the reasons. It's everybody, though. It's the whole team. And my question is, I don't think you're going to pull Jalen Duren off the floor. And Isaiah Stewart's 20 minutes a game they're not costing anybody anything. It's the 27 minutes that Asar Thompson's going to get. So I'm curious how far do they drop him? I don't think they're going to drop him beneath 24, but he's not going to get the 30 that you would think a player of his capabilities could wiggle his way into as injuries strike and all of the different things happen, and he starts to overwhelm people with his physical, talents, and it's just not there. So he doesn't have opportunities to drive. He doesn't have opportunities to shoot because he can't. He doesn't want to. And all of this keeps his popcorn stats from being where they need to be to accommodate for the free throw. So I don't know if he's going to cross the top 100 this season. I know he's got the potential and he's got the talent to make it happen, but it just feels like the game's moving too fast for him. And that's a him issue. That's not a JB Bickerstaff issue. That's a him issue. Jalen Duren, a ton of heat on Jalen Duren to start the season. He was a top 20 to 30 basketball play in fantasy leagues. Back into the top 100s over the last 2 weeks. That's gross. I think this is a lot having to do with the zone defense, for one. I mean, this thing has screwed up Detroit. And when Duncan Robinson was healthy, they got his ass back on the floor as fast as humanly possible because he was the only thing that was going to keep that from getting even worse than it already was. So Duncan Robinson saving the Detroit Pistons. But Jalen Duren, within all of that, was running up the floor and doing some amazing things as a basketball player that a big man his size shouldn't be doing, it specifically with the dribbling. That's chilled out a little bit, and I do think that teams have grown wise to what that is. His last 3 weeks value is at 94. He's starting to see slippage in the shooting. It's not quite as high as it was, say, a month ago. The blocks have come back down a little bit. Not a huge block guy. He's getting about 1 on the season. In the last 3 games, last 4 games, he got a half a block. Steals are down. And I'm curious, is he slowing down? Is one of the things with Jalen Duren is a man that size with those ankle issues, that he's going to have some pounding on those things, and it's going to slow him down. So where he was able to come down, hit the moves really quick, really use speed on top of the strength to be able to get where he wants and convert. It looked amazing, but now with too much workload and, the kind of the rigors of the season, I think he's going to slide back a bit. I think that his top 45 rank for the season in 8 cat leagues is maybe a little bit high. I think maybe we caught Jalen Duren when he was fresh, and unfortunately for him, that it's going to be hard for him. I would be curious to see how he does coming out of the break, especially after Detroit does whatever they do over the next week. And actually, no, they're not in the cup. How many times I had to look at the cup cheat sheet to know who was playing in the cup? I don't think they're playing in the cup. But with all the time off, regardless, I think in the lower than normal schedule, the lesser games played this week, I think that I would like to see if he comes back spry. And then I would wonder if after the All-Star break, you start to see the same thing. But then for the rest of the time, all that durability starts to kick in. Pistons are not in the cup. Who's not in the cup is Dennis Jenkins. He's not in fantasy leagues either. He's been dropped. Okay, how many times did I drop Dennis Jenkins? All right, let's come clean, everybody. I dropped Dennis Jenkins everywhere but one place, and it hurt my heart. And I knew that it was going to be a tough 2 weeks, 3 weeks even. And I'm going to be so pissed 2-3 weeks from now when he's good again. I don't think that the evaluations were off. Obviously, if I tell you to hold and you got to drop, then the evaluation is off. But in terms of his play, I think that the shots that didn't fall, it was a little bit unfortunate for him because they were right on line. They hit the back of the iron. They didn't go in. A couple of fall here and there, and maybe he gets more better confidence, and all the things happen. But in this situation where you have Jaden Ivey coming back, you have all these players coming back, he needed to be pretty damn good to hold everybody off. Those shots don't fall. All right, hey, you'll get your next chance when somebody gets hit with an injury. But I don't think that the coaches in Detroit don't understand what he brought and brings to the table, because they have him in the game in key times all the time. Defensively, he's turning away his offensive player quite frequently. So it's all good for him. It's just not right now for Dennis Jenkins. So I had to drop him everywhere except for one spot where I was like, I'm not going to do that. There's too many good players on the waiver wire. There's 45 players that I wrote about. And Dennis Jenkins was, I believe, number 27 or 28, because I do think there is a chance if you have space on your roster for a hold, you're in a deeper league, I think Dennis Jenkins can actually be a reverse pickup here. Isaiah Stewart, is he a top 100 player? The answer is yes. He's settled in as a top 110 to 130 guy on the season, but I think he's a top 100 player because I just think he's going to do it. I think he's got his low minute role. There's some concerns about his knee. I think that the higher end blocks are really tough to come by in today's NBA. There's probably some reasoning or rationale or some distribution of numbers that could be researched, but to get 2 blocks a game, hell, Adem Bona was the 5th leading block getter a couple days ago with 1.5. So the blocks are good. So I'll call him a top 100 player. Moving on to the Warriors, Brandon Pajemski, is he good enough to be on rosters outside of streaming situations? The answer is no. Draymond Green, is he a streamer or a hold? Well, he ain't good. He's not good. He's a top 140 guy on the season. And he misses games. And he's got a right midfoot sprain. And maybe he'll be a top 100 guy someday. But no, I don't know if he's a streamer unless you need assists. I'll put it to you that way. I dropped him and I felt great about it. Moses Moody, is there a realistic path for him to be a must roster player this season? I think the answer is yes, but he made his life a little bit harder by allowing and cracking the door open for Pat Spencer. Buddy Hield got going. I think what Steve Kerr did was a little bit of a lineup shift with the injuries, and he found a group that he likes and he kind of rode them. Moses Moody, not a part of that group, just 19 minutes per game over the last 3 games. That in and of itself might be your indicator for Moses Moody that as things switch back and you get Curry back, you get Butler back, and you get Draymond Green back, that Moody comes back to his old role, which over the last 3 weeks in 10 games is 27 minutes per game. Prior to this dip, he had about a 125 expectation, a 150 floor, and had upside. He was moving into the top 75 range at certain points in time back when Steve Kerr had full confidence in him. So you're getting the 2 different pictures of what Moses Moody can be. And Moses Moody right now, he just kind of cost himself that cushion that you need in fantasy leagues to be a must roster player. So he's not there right now, but there is a path for him to get back because I do think Buddy Hield's not trustable. And I think that Moses Moody works well with those other players and that he will get back, but not right now. Buddy Hield, not going to buy into the Buddy Hield stuff. Pat Spencer, maybe there's a correlation between he and Stephen Curry, that Pat Spencer brings the Stephen Curry element to the game. But his story is fascinating, and it's the lacrosse stuff. I just read about this. He's playing lacrosse in college. He's got like 1 year of basketball under his belt. And you see certain elements, not that I'm a big lacrosse guy or anything, but, you know, the little like turn and spin stuff when you got a defender running at you in lacrosse. He's just a big guy that's out there. He knows his spacing. And this is where other sports, if you got a kid, you make sure that they play soccer and they play other sports. So they got spatial awareness. Pat Spencer is going to probably have fantasy value when we don't expect it. And that's not going to be something that we can deal with. But if a game comes with Curry out and you want to know who the next Stephen Curry is, and it's not his brother Seth, it's going to be Pat Spencer. But I'm kidding with a lot of that. Amen Thompson. If I was drafting today for rest of seasons, where would Amen Thompson land? That is a great question. So I ranked him, I want to say like 45 last season in the B150. He was kind of like barely getting, drafted in like the hundreds, 110s, something like that. I bet on his talent, and I bet on him cracking the rotation and just seeing his way through, which is what he did. This season, top 60 for Amen Thompson. He'd been cruising for a little bit. He had a little top 40 run, and go Amen Thompson. You got it, bud. Now, back to top 70 over the last 5 games. Free throw, not bad. Free throw, not bad. Doesn't feel right. Free throw, not bad. I'm going to be doing a stat check on my own notes here. TOS and vertigo, not a great mix. But bottom line is he needs to get more defensive stats than teammate Reed Shepherd. And that's not a diss on Reed Shepherd. Reed Shepherd, one of the reasons I had him ranked in the 60s in the B150 is those defensive stats. But Amen Thompson at 1.2 and 0.8, steals and blocks per game. Like this is not Amen Thompson stuff. I mean, when you draft Amen Thompson, you're hoping to get closer to 2 in the steals. When you draft Amen Thompson, you're hoping to get close to 1 in the blocks. And bottom line is you're hoping that he got kind of a representative role in the Houston Rockets offense, especially with Fred VanVleet going out. Fred VanVleet goes out and Amen Thompson starts getting drafted at 15. So it starts getting drafted in the second round. Amen Thompson prior to that, I believe, was 3rd or 4th. And I know people were overdrafting him at that rate. So it's all bad. And if I was to draft Amen Thompson right now, based on everything that I've seen, and not a lot is changing in Houston going forward, and let's just assume we just stipulate there's no injury that's going to come and save him. Probably top 40 would be where I would draft Amen Thompson. And a lot of that is on the basis of him being out there every night and sort of the volume of minutes that he's going to get. Not Amen Thompson plays 90% of his games because he misses a couple times. And yeah, that free throw percentage is correct. That's amazing. Good job, Amen. But yeah, no, the defensive numbers are a big problem, as well as the overall volume of stats. And that's what happens with Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun on the same team. Reed Shepherd, he has been a top 76 play per game this season, though I'm not sure if that number is correct. It's close, though. 25 minutes a game. Defensive stats are great. Just as mentioned, over 2 combined defensive stats per game. Points, you got threes, a little bit of rebounds, a little bit of assists, kind of quiet most nights. But, these defensive stats and the threes and just being decent, it's good enough to get you that mid-round value. Has he got another gear this season? I don't think so. I think even if he got closer to 30 minutes per game, let's say that Amen Thompson got hurt or something, I don't think they're going to run their offense through him. I don't think he's going to get a ton more volume. And I think that the volume would come at the expense of his efficiency. So as we rate all of these categories equally, then I think they would all kind of just stay in the same ballpark. I think I got the different read numbers just somewhere. Anyway, Alperen Sengun, is he a sell high? I think he's kind of at where he will be for the rest of the season. He's been a top 20 guy per game, and in 8 cat leagues, of course. I kind of just think even if certain things change, we can't project that he's going to have say a major fall off from the foul line. That's the one concern I have with Alpy, is that he has a bad month at the foul line. He's taken great lengths to improve his shot. So maybe some of the variability is down here. But the one way that he has sunk fantasy teams each and every season, it's been through that efficiency. And this season it's not happening because he has taken kind of the proverbial step forward from a fantasy perspective. I guess my only concern is if the going gets tough because teams finally expose his defense, that might be an area where you start to see a little regression, mostly because of the frustration, not because of the talent. Let's get to the Indiana Pacers. Andrew Nembhard, is he a disappointment, or is this who he is? He's producing in the top 115 range. I would just say more or less this is who he is. Benedict Mathurin, now a top 100 player. Is he going to do that for the rest of the season? And I kind of think he's actually appropriately ranked based on his play. And this is kind of what happens when you get guys that don't produce defensive stats and have some of the issues that he has. Pascal Siakam, is he a buy low? Well, he was a couple weeks ago when those percentages were really, really bad. He shot 52-ish% from the field in the last 2 to 3 weeks. So that, along with the point guards, has brought his value up. Now his season-long value, when you make a trade offer for Pascal Siakam, is going to say something in the ballpark of 80 on a per game basis in an 8-cat league. So that's clearly not as good as what he will be, when everything normalizes. If you look at his last 3 weeks and even month-long numbers, he's in the top 60 range. That's where he's always played classically. There was some thought maybe this season he could be something of a top 40 play, as they don't have Tyrese Halliburton. I think what we want to aim for here with Pascal Siakam is probably top 50 to top 60. If he does better, great. It's all gravy. And I do think you might have a little bit of room to buy low. And some of the slippage over the last 3 games has had him in the top 100. So that burst that he had has been hidden by this last week. So you probably have a little bit of a shot there to maybe gain like a round or 2 of value. And also he is going to be consistent, I think. I think he will probably play the season out until the very end. If Indiana's lost a lot of games, maybe he will take an early exit, but I think he's mentally poised to go big this season. TJ McConnell all over the board. A top 155 value in 8 cat leagues in his 17-ish minutes per game, better in 9 cat formats. And if he gets his 25 minutes per game, he's got top 120 value. Usually that's top 90 in a 9 cat league. It's great, but I just don't know if he's going to get there. I don't know if his body is going to get there. And now all the other point guards are back. It's been 13 games. If we could get some 20 to 25 minute games somewhere in there, I think we'd all be a lot more excited about trying to get into some of this upside for TJ McConnell, but we haven't seen it yet. I would treat him as a late round guy with some upside, with some risk, and you probably just want to throw your hat into the ring every so often and see if you can get lucky and get the 25-minute per game version of TJ McConnell. But it's a crapshoot at this point. The most interesting player in Indiana is Jay Huff, and the splits on this guy are just wild. Like, you go to the season-long split in an 8-cat league, and he's a top 160 player and 18 minutes per game. Classic Huff, to quote the great Doc. Okay, well, what happens when we add water to this thing? 20 minutes per game, 106. 22 minutes per game, 60. 23 minutes per game, basically 40. So then we look at percentages and all the different things. I shot 50% from the field over the last 3 weeks. And in the season, he's a 45% guy. But these aren't high volume numbers. This is the difference between 6 and 7 attempts at these percentages. It's not swaying his rank. It's not swaying fantasy leagues. He doesn't shoot free throws. Now, the number we want to keep an eye on is blocks. Over the last 3 weeks, he's over 3 per game. Hello, Sacramento. Does anybody ever work over there? Do you know this guy exists? His name is Jay Huff. Just, wondering. But hey, if he's going to get 3 blocks per game, he's going to be an early round play. I don't think he's going to get 3 blocks per game. That's asking a lot, even out of Jay Huff, who has a great block percentage. It's not really, I don't know. I mean, if he plays 30 minutes a game, I might revisit that statement. But even at 2.8 blocks per game over the last month in 20 minutes per game, top 100 value. So I think my question for Jay Huff, evaluators or myself as we evaluate Jay Huff is, where are we throwing the dart? I think at minimum, he's a late round value because I think there's been enough success with Indiana and Rick Carlisle probably recognizing that and seeing the way that Isaiah Jackson's playing and saying, you know what, it's Jay Huff season. Dude's going to get 23 minutes. And then the question is, can his knee hold up? And what happens if Obi Toppin gets back in a few weeks? What happens when Aaron Nesmith gets back? Does the things shift a little bit? Do they kind of run some smaller lineups out there? But that's down the road. He's either a late round value, a mid round value, or an early round value. And you got to throw the dart, I think, at mid round value for Jay Huff. So if you're trying to acquire or if you're trying to get rid of Jay Huff, I would base that number in an 8-cat league on a rank of like 80. If you try to beat that number on whatever side of the equation you're working with. As for teammate Nesmith, I think, you're going to get some news stories here that he's coming back and more definitively. And if you need a top 100 to 125 guy who can be a top 75 guy when things are all going well, try to get in there and do it before that news gets super obvious. Not a must-add player by any means. Let's get to the Clippers. Are the Clippers boring for fantasy? Yes. Is John Collins supposed to be on a roster? I don't think so. I don't think the trade worked out or the new landing spot, however you want to look at it. I don't think it worked out. I don't think that they want to pass him the ball. I don't think they care if John Collins gets stats or not. I think they're probably trying to trade John Collins. We'll see who does that, and then we can all evaluate that at some other point in time. But there's just no indication at all that he's going to be good. Everything was speculative that they would recognize that he was sort of the Swiss Army knife that they needed to be good. But the Clippers probably have bigger things on their minds these days. Just saying. In Lakerland, LeBron James had a good game, and that answered a key question as to whether or not he was capable. You never know with Father Time, even with players of his stature. You just never know. Was sciatica the thing that brought him down? Who knew? Who knows? And after X amount of games of no production, was LeBron going to be a mid-round or a late round or possibly an early round guy? Well, we got an early round line in last night's action. And I think we'll just kind of go back to preseason expectations on a per game basis for LeBron James, which, without looking it up, was something in like the 45 or 40 or maybe even the 35 range. Yeah, something like that on a per game basis in an 8-cat league. And I don't think there's any reason at this point in time to look at it differently. Yes, there's a little bit of an additional risk, but you knew that on draft day. We knew that when we made these projections. Like, this is kind of what he is. And yeah, there could be all sorts of twists and turns. It's LeBron James, but in terms of his basketball ability, I think I would rate him at that level I just said. Austin Reeves, is he a sell high? Well, he's clearly a B150 win, and this is one of my favorite type where people are actually knowledgeable and are trying to get him, and we just go higher because we know he's better than that. And he's been a top 10 guy for a while, top 7 on the season. Should we sell high on Austin Reeves? And I think the answer is no. I just don't think you're going to get the value in return. I also think Austin Reeves, while he has a little bit of his own injury risk, he's the guy that he's just so well positioned. Luka will take his game off. LeBron will take his game off. And who will lead the way? Austin Reeves. It's awesome. Luka, can he crack the top 3 this season? It's an interesting question. Yes, he can. He can crack the top 3. Right now, he is number 3. So that answers that one. But can he stay there? Obviously, is the intent of the question. And you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you got Wemby, you got, obviously Jokic is just going to run away with things because that's what he does. We're going to rule Nikola Jokic out of fantasy leagues any year now. Just sort of wondering for everybody. I don't know that I would bet on Luka. I mean, the answer to this question is probably best phrase. Can he do it cumulatively? Because on a per game basis, it's going to be close one way or another. It'll be he or Shea or, maybe even Tyrese Maxey. Probably not on Maxey, even though he got really, really big numbers to start the season. But can he just stay in the game? It doesn't help you to be a top 3 value if you finish in the top 12, on games played. And yeah, all that stuff does matter in the fantasy playoffs because people that rest, they rest in the fantasy playoffs. You don't want Luka resting in your fantasy playoffs. Let's get to the Memphis Grizzlies. Cedric Coward, will the stash pay off? He finally got a good one off the other day. I would bet on Cedric Coward because I think that whatever happens in Memphis, he will be at the top of the list compared to other players who will be lower in the list. And I do think there's a little bit of maybe this guy's not as good of a fantasy play as, people thought when he was ripping off top 40 numbers. He's a top 140 guy on the season, been outside of the top 200 for a little bit here. It's the defensive numbers. And that's a huge conversation that we don't need to cover right now. But a player of his ability and his size should have more defensive numbers than that. So it's a strategy issue. It's the way he plays the game, and we'll have to evaluate that. But being that that's true, he needs to shoot the ball a lot better, and he needs more minutes. He needs a bigger role. And I'll say this. If you need to drop Cedric Coward to get a hot, like a Kyle Filipowski, you drop Cedric Coward and you go get Kyle Filipowski. Santi Aldama, worth the hold? Yes, all season long. He's a guy that fits their system that they like to have on the floor. It hasn't looked great over the last 3 games outside of the top 150, but on the season, top 130 in just 26 minutes per game. That includes this most recent 2-week dip. So what goes down must come up. And at that point in time, he's probably going to be flirting with top 100 value on the season. That's really hard to find. He's a top 90 guy on the season in 8-cat, top 80 cumulatively. So I think you got to just hang on to that, right? Cam Spencer, is he just a streamer? The answer to that question is yes. And you have Ja Morant coming back. That's going to wipe things out for a little bit for Cam Spencer. Also a little bit playing too well. He's probably got a little bit of a dip on his way. So I don't think we want to go overboard and try to like hold Cam Spencer in lieu of some season-long talent. Zach Edey, can he be this good all season? Yes, I think so. I think what happened with Zach Edey is that all the people who thought he could be really, really good, I think that they were right. And I think his foot speed is central to that. He has been quick and nimble enough to not be played off the floor. In the last 3 games, he's played 29 minutes a game, 26 minutes per game on the season. He's got you 20 points over the last 3 games. I believe there's a Kings game in that sample. Numbers are really kind of off the charts, over 2 blocks per game, shooting 66 to 70-ish% from the field. Not really hurting you too bad at the foul line, even during the dips. Turnovers in a good place. Not really shooting the 3 ball, but that's okay. You get me 20 and 13 over the last 3 games, and I will ignore your lack of 3-point shooting. Look, we got some injury risk to account for. We got some Ja Morant risk to account for. I do think that he is this good of a player. I think those 2 things should be accounted for. And I do think the Ja Morant thing will leave a mark. I don't think Ja is going to just be dumping it into Zach or hitting him every time he flashes across the lane, which is how he's gotten available for a lot of these points. Rebounds-wise, I don't think those numbers are coming back. If something weird happens with the Grizzlies and they trade players, we could deal with it then. I think Zach Edey has about a top 40 value going forward as a baseline, even with the Ja Morant return. So it's just the case that Zach Edey did indeed get more than the 20 minutes or the 22 minutes per game that people kind of thought, maybe 24 minutes that he would play. He's been good enough to earn the 26th and the 27th and the 29th minute. And for somebody with his stat set, with the way that he accumulates points and boards and blocks, he is able to fly up the ranks real quick. And that's what's happened. You see this with the next team that we'll talk about in Miami Heat and Khalil Ware. It's a just add water situation, just like Jay Huff, just like a lot of other big men that are out there. You get up and above 25 minutes and good things happen for these guys. Khalil Ware in a dip and playing just 23 minutes per game over the last 4 games, he's been a top 100 value, despite being kind of jerked around by Eric Spoelstra, which, by the way, is fine. I mean, he and Bam Adebayo probably aren't going to work. It's not Khalil Ware's fault. Bam Adebayo can't slide his feet. They talk about Bam Adebayo being able to defend 1 through 5. That's a fable. Like, he can kind of defend quick 4s, but he's just a big guy. He's a big guy who can move well in small spaces. He's not a defend a point guard guy. And Khalil Ware has that kind of mobility. He has that kind of length, but you pair the 2 together and they're too big. You can't play that much size with these 2 players. So it's going to be a little bit bumpy for Khalil. He'll get a little bit of extra minutes here and there. Anytime Bam Adebayo goes, he'll be a top 20 to 30 player, goes down, that is. And so I think with Ware, who's got a top 60 value on the season in 25 minutes per game, I think you just hang out with that. And where will he land by the end of this season? Probably in that range. He's probably going to finish on a per game basis, I would say, at like the top 50 level, maybe 55 or 60. And then playing a lot of games. If he does that, he's going to be a guy that you look at the end of the season, you're like, what? Khalil Ware ranked in the 2nd round? That didn't feel like that. Well, what happens when Eric Spoelstra loves the guy? Well, he'll probably be a top 10 pick at that point in time. So dynasty GMs pay notice. Norm Powell, what do I expect rest of season? Some sort of value loss and injury and a lot of a bummer, for folks that, enjoy top 40, top 60 value. Tyler Hero will leave a mark, but it's really the injury issues that usually pop up for Powell after he's had a big 1 month, 2 month top 50 run, and then the injuries hit. So whenever you have a good Norm Powell, try to move a good Norm Powell. Andrew Wiggins, what do I expect rest of season? Top 100 value. That's what Andrew Wiggins does. Jaime Jaquez has been a late round producer over the season in 30 minutes per game. And when Miami's at full strength and he starts to take a dip, he'll produce beneath the cut line. But when you get injuries start to mount, just make sure you know what's up with Jaime Jaquez, because he can get into the top 75 and top 100 range pretty quick. He doesn't have upside beyond that, but he can get up there pretty quick. Let's get to Milwaukee. What to expect when Giannis returns? I have no idea. I think it just depends on who he play for. I begged you guys to sell high. I begged you guys. Begged. Now you're on your own. Bobby Portis, is he worth more than a streamer, even with Giannis out? I thought the last two games numbers were pretty good for him. 14.5 points, 2.5 triples, 5.5 boards, 2 assists, 2 combined steals and blocks. The efficiencies were bad. That's why these ranks aren't really jumping off of the page. And he's probably not going to be good if it's just him and KPJ and Ryan Rollins and that's it. And Miles Turner, and that's it. It's funny, I always forget Miles Turner. I wonder why. He has had, and granted this happened with a lot of good teammates, he has had top 50 value on a season. He played all 82 games that season. So top 75, top 100 production. He's done this in the past. So I think a top 100, top 125 level production for Bobby Portis as one of the last guys standing. He's a fan favorite. I think he can be a good piece to keep the attention of a Kevin Porter Jr., if you know what I mean, if you pick up what I'm putting down. And then Ryan Rollins, I think there's enough there to where Bobby Portis is a good bridge to what those guys are doing. And maybe it all goes to hell. And I'm not running, breaking down doors to pick up Bobby Portis. I had him ranked 10 in the waiver wire article, which you can see over at sportsethos.com. But other than that, the ramp is there. So if he's a 125 in an 8-cat league the rest of the way, I mean, he might have a top 100 finish. That can be hard to find depending on your league size. So a big winner with the Giannis situation, because Giannis ain't coming back, guys. I hate to tell you. Maybe for a week or two if they can't trade him, but it's not happening. I don't think it's going to be tough for Milwaukee. And you guys have heard me say that a bunch. Kyle Kuzma, is there any hope? No. His name is Kyle Kuzma. Miles Turner, how high am I willing to go for Turner? I am pretty worried about Turner. He needed a lot of Tyrese Halliburton to be the basketball player he ended up being, which is one of the better centers in the NBA, and taking the Indiana Pacers to the finals and places like that. Milwaukee, it's a totally different story. KPJ's not running pick and pop, he's running pick and go, and Ryan Rollins isn't bending the defense with his mind. He's bending the defense with his speed. Miles Turner is just kind of sitting around scoring 12 points a game over the last 4 games without Giannis, for the most part. So I'm concerned, and I was concerned, and I was not drafting Miles Turner this year because of the fact that this team could devolve, and Miles Turner needs other good players to tap into the things that he does well. So on the season, he's been a top 90 guy. I kind of think that's where he might go. Now, if you want to get optimistic and say he'll be the man and they'll run everything through Miles Turner, I can hear your point. I'm just not excited about it. So Miles Turner, I think a top 90, maybe top 80 the rest of the way. AJ Green, can he sustain 12-team value? If he's healthy, yes, he'll get you 3 triples per game, and that'll do the trick. Kevin Porter Jr., are we selling high? And how good can he be? Well, this could have easily led off the episode. He's been a top 6 guy over the last 4 games. He's played 6 games this year. He's been a top 6 guy in those 6 games. I was aggressively ranking Kevin Porter Jr. and trying to draft him. And when I would get to the point of time where it was time to draft him, his kind of peripherals would scare me a little bit. I didn't avoid him, drafting him, and I have him in a couple places. So I'm happy that I did that. But, in terms of sell high, no, he's not going to shoot 57% or whatever it is all season long. It's more likely he's going to shoot 45. Steals, he's not going to get you 2.5 steals a game, I don't think. I mean, maybe these games are junky enough. 3-ball, I doubt he's going to hit you 4 threes a game. Not breaking any news here, but he's not going to be a top 5 fantasy player this season. What can he be? I think he can be a top 30 player without breaking out the abacus and the ruler and the protractor and getting all the numbers completely dialed in. I mean, it's a 6-game sample size, going off of what I thought and now saying, okay, definitely no Giannis pretty much the whole way. In my mind, I had Giannis playing probably, like 50-ish games, 40-ish games. You couldn't just say that was going to happen because that's a really low number. But, he's the only guy. Ryan Rollins has got the athleticism. He's got the skill, but he doesn't have what Kevin Porter has, which is kind of like FU athleticism and FU skill. Like he can get to where he wants to go on the floor, and he can do that at a high level. And Ryan Rollins cannot do that. That's why the pecking order has been established the way that it has been, and it's going to carry on this way for the rest of the season. So Kevin Porter Jr., I kind of throwing a dart baseline top 40. Ryan Rollins throwing a dart baseline top 70, top 80, just given the stat sets and the deficiencies there. But guys, this is great. If you had Ryan Rollins and you were thinking about a sell high and you didn't do it, now you get Ryan Rollins without Giannis, and he's just going to have a clear ramp. Maybe they trade somebody back into this equation, but really, I don't know. I'm not even sure how any of these guys are going to get traded, and what comes back, I don't know. But there's so much space in Milwaukee, I just don't care. As long as it's not like a point guard, that's probably the only thing. And why would you bring back in a point guard unless it's the only deal that you could get done? Why would you bring back in a point guard where that's the only position on your roster where you have actually decent players, except for Miles Turner, who, again, needs a point guard that's not named Kevin Porter Jr., not named Ryan Rollins? Maybe that's the rationale, but this whole process has been hilarious, and why Miles Turner thought it was a good idea to go to Milwaukee when he was playing for the Indiana Pacers. Yes, they lowballed you, Miles, but sometimes it's better to say no. Let's get to Minnesota. Julius Randle, rest of season expectations. He's been a top 30 guy on the season, top 33. It's been bad the last 3 weeks. He's been a top 110 guy. 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, I was telling you guys to sell high. All of these things normalize. I think at the end of the season, as long as there's no injury involved for him, I think in an 8-cat league, he's probably a top 60 to 70 guy. And in a 9-cat league, I think he's a top 80 to 100 guy. And that's obviously way lower than he is right now. So there's definitely room to sell high. I wonder what Minnesota is going to do throughout the season, because I think it's going to become abundantly clear that they can't win with this group, and they can't win with Julius Randle taking the amount of shots that he's taking. And it's not even so much about him as it is they need offense to come from different areas of the floor, not where Julius Randle operates. So what will they do? Probably bring another player in, probably clutters things up, probably comes at the expense of Julius Randle. Hence, even without that scenario, I'm big time sell high. And hopefully you guys did that 3 or 4 weeks ago. Naz Reid, is he good again? Yeah, he's good again. He's been a top 40 or 50 guy over the last 3 weeks or a month. That's the proverbial swing of the pendulum. He was bad and Julius Randle was good. And now we swing it back the other direction and Naz Reid is good again. He's been a top 80 guy in the season, and that's where you're going to rate him. Rudy Gobert, is the decline kicking in? Yes, it is. Top 130 on the season in 31 minutes per game. Where's that coming from? Blocks, boards a little bit down, points are a little bit down. It's just the natural progression of things. So Rudy Gobert declining. Pelicans, Derek Queen, how good can he be this season? I posted it in the waiver wire article if you want to get the long version. Basically, he can be a top 50 to 100 player at pretty much any time between now and then. No, but once they pivot to Derek Queen, and I think the Zion stuff is actually pretty important here because at least it sets the expectation that Zion's on his way out. And now they can just kind of focus on, do they want to let Derek Queen handle the rock all game long? I think the answer will be no for the next month. After that, it'll be like, oh, let's do this half the time. And after the month after that, it'll be like, oh, let's let Derek Queen handle the ball. We bet everything on him, and we need to see what he can do running a basketball squad. So right now, even when it's been bad, he's been inside the top 150. So it's just easy money here. I know he's probably rostered in a lot of places. If he's popping up on waiver wires, it's a instant ad situation. You don't ever really get a player who's got a fantasy friendly game like this where there's question marks about minutes and role and things like that. But we know that they bet everything on him, and they're going to want him on the floor, and they're going to want to see what he can do. So it's just a guarantee that he hits either 50 to 100. And I think 75 is incredibly reasonable for him when they give him the ball and just go. So you got a lot of value there. I think there's a lot of value for a buy low. I think you guys can do that right now, even though his name is quite buzzy. Jeremiah Fears, do I trust him to be consistent? Yeah, I trust him to be consistently at the top 150 range pretty much all season long. Maybe a little bit better top 100 in the months of March and April. Sadiq Bey, kind of the same thing. I think he's going to be, well, actually not the same thing. I think he's going to be a late round guy as a floor and probably as a likelihood for the rest of the season, barring whatever happens with, anybody that might come into the mix. So that's good. I mean, it's kind of what he's done his entire career. He needs a lot of volume and numbers to keep his late round value, but that's what he's going to get. Trey Murphy, is he a second or a third round player? I would call him a third round player because of some of the issues in New Orleans and some of his injury risk. Herbert Jones, I had him in the waiver wire column because he's getting healthy again, and this might be his last pit stop in his journey this season. If he can't get it going right now, I think we're really looking at issues long term. My only thought process here is if the injuries were holding him back, maybe that's why the numbers have been so bad. Other than that, there could be just enough players at his position to where he's fallen back and out of the mix. Trade rumors maybe also playing into this a little bit, but I really think he's looked a little slow, and a player of his type needed to stay on the cutting edge of athleticism to be good. So if he just needed that injury to be dealt with and he can come back, I would call him a top 90 upside guy. So that's not a lot of upside compared to where he usually is, which is like a top 60 guy. So make your add drop decisions accordingly. Jalen Brunson, moving on to the Knicks. Is he a top 40 guy for the rest of the season? And I actually think that's probably the ballpark of what he will be. Josh Hart, what's his value rest of the season? We're starting to see some guys get banged up and is opening up further avenues for Josh Hart to have value. He's been a top 15 to 25 guy over the last 2 weeks. Over the last month, he's been a top 30 guy. 8 cat leagues, by the way. Top 60 on the season for a guy who was getting crushed. This guy's ADP went from like 50 to like 110 in about 2 to 3 weeks. And this is a big time sell high, guys. The OG Anunoby return, I think, changes his role. And we're not going to see that if there's some time off for Miles McBride. We're probably not going to see that for a week or two. So you still have ramp here. And it's not anything against Josh Hart. And this guy's going to probably, if Mike Brown, has him cast correctly, in this play here, he's a transition, drive, kick guy. He's Mike Brown's guy. I think Mike Brown figured it out maybe a little bit too late, or maybe there was other things going on in New York that were causing him to fade Josh Hart. But I don't think that's the case. I just think OG Anunoby alone is going to knock Josh Hart back like 3 rounds. So this top 20 to 30 value, I think, becomes top 50 to 60 value, which is his season-long numbers. But with some injury risk and also the potential of if this team starts to have too many scorers and not enough basketballs, maybe you start to see Josh Hart slide into the 75 to 90 range. I would probably use 75 as a guide here in an 8-cat league for his value, which is a great number for him. And I think at the same time, it gives you room to sell high. Karl Anthony Towns, a lot of questions about whether he can be a first-round guy. And I will tell you the answer to that is if he gets his ass up off the ground and blocks some shots. If he doesn't do that, he's a second-round guy. If he blocks some shots, he's a first-round guy. Let's move it on to Mikal Bridges. I've been begging you guys to sell high. He's a top 17 player. Everybody uses that term all the time, top 17. But basically inside the second round in 8-cat leagues, much better in 9-cat leagues. With OG Anunoby coming back, I think top 40 for him seems reasonable. He's been very active defensively. That's the part that's been very different about him this season over last season and the years before that. He was a 2 steals guy a long time ago, and now he's up there again, getting you blocks as well, involved in everything. Updates as far as the Knicks go. McBride listed out for Tuesday. Karl Anthony Towns questionable for Tuesday. He did practice. Towns did yesterday. So the calf designation is not quite as worrying as it would be had he not practiced. But Mikal Bridges, I think you got to sell that number. 30 would be the target in 9 cat leagues, 40 the target in 8 cat leagues. And that even feels a little bit rich, guys. And I think you could probably, at this point with Mikal Bridges, you could probably get a top 30 pretty easily. And in a 9 cat league, you might even be able to get like a top 25. And I think those are easy yeses on the sell high front. Let's get to OKC, where questions are abound about AJ Mitchell. Would I drop him for a hot free agent? I did. I think that this last 3-game sample where he's been a 105, it's not terrible, but it's not the direction we want it to go. And he's going to be capped at late round value, I believe, as long as they are relatively healthy with the main guys, the Jalen Williams, the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, even what was my guy's name? I'm drawing a blank. He's a really good player. He's a center. We'll chat. Thank you. Brain, back on. I haven't fainted yet. This is amazing. AJ Mitchell, probably a late round value going forward. So if you see a hot free agent and the late round value can be replaced at any point in time, you can move on from AJ Mitchell. And great job, AJ. And he will probably be good at another point in time in his career. Cason Wallace, he's been stealing the ball more. I can't say anything else beyond that. I think he might have an injury that we're not hearing about because the minutes have been down, and he's been really good for these guys for a while. And I mean, we're talking like really good. So with that, I would say Cason Wallace, I'm not giving up on him. I think the steals are enough to get the job done for me in a roto setting. I don't know about in a head-to-head setting. I'll just leave it at this. I think there's more there for Cason Wallace. He could jump up and be a top 75 player pretty easily. Jalen Williams, is he a second-round player rest of the season? Yes. Could he be a first-round player rest of the season? Sure. Why not? Orlando Magic, Anthony Black, should he be a must-roster player? Absolutely. It's not going to be as pretty as you would like it to be. It's the foul shooting. We talked about it earlier in the show. If you don't care about foul shooting, probably going to be a top 100 guy or better for however long Franz Wagner is out. But the good news is that he's looking like a good basketball player. He'll get the free throw shooting worked out. If you talk to Mark Camaro over in our Dynasty division, ask him if he likes Anthony Black. I like Anthony Black for the future, and I think next year will be better than this year. And Franz Wagner, 2 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. I would be shocked if it's 2 weeks. That would be crazy for a high ankle sprain, but he's going to get some ramp. That's all we need to know there. You also have other injury prone players there. So, it looks pretty good for Anthony Black. I just don't think you're going to get up and over the top 100 unless you subtract out that foul shooting. Desmond Bane, a great question here. If I was drafting today, rest of the season, how high would I draft Bane? And I had him really high. I want to say like 20, 18, something like that in 8 cat leagues. On the basis of producing at last year's level and a little bit better, knowing that they bet everything on him and knowing that they desperately need not just his outside shooting, but his playmaking. They need his defense. They need his spunk. And it's not like they weren't spunky in Orlando, but this Desmond Bane fight that he has in him, it fits well with what Orlando's got going on. And if you weren't watching yesterday's game, it was hilarious when the refs are letting these guys foul the crap out of each other, and that's when it usually goes bad. And so he gets the ball at the tail end of a fast break, and I guess in his mind, he's like, I could at least argue that I'm falling out of bounds as I throw the ball baseball style at OG Anunoby's back, which could have easily been his head. I think if I had to guess, Bane knew he couldn't hit him in the head with it, but he thought in the back, that's easy. I can do this. I'll just chuck it at him. I'm pissed off. And now fined $35,000 for throwing the ball at OG Anunoby. But the other update there is Jalen Suggs not listed on the injury report, which is really good because he looked like kind of like Paolo looked like when he walked off the court with his groin injury. But Jalen Suggs apparently, doesn't need to take a game off. Somebody needs to tell that guy to take a game off because he's an injury prone player that can only play 24 minutes per game, and he needs to take a game off. If I had, and we'll talk about him in a second, if I had him, I'd be like, take the game off. All right. If you're watching on the YouTube channel on or even on Twitter, I don't know where you're watching this, but make sure you guys get signed in and subscribe on your pod feed, whichever your pod feed is. Make sure that you click the subscribe button and you get all of our content, because we're putting all sorts of content in different places. You want to make sure that you're locked into all of it. Hit the thumbs up and also subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. But if I was to draft Desmond Bane today, I think I'm probably good with baseline production that we've seen in prior seasons in the top 40, top 30 range. I have a question, not about him. I have a question about Paolo Banchero, whether he can envision a basketball team where Desmond Bane is utilized at the highest level, even though he has to take a haircut to get his stats. And even it's like multi-level. Like you see what you see and you can get what you can get, but sometimes that's not the move. You got to make sure that this works so then you can get the entire team to get going. I'm not sure that Paolo has that in his wheelhouse. Bottom line, no Franz Wagner for a couple of weeks. Paolo's dinged up. Jalen Suggs is dinged up. Desmond Bane's not really dinged up. He's got a history, but he's not really dinged up right now. Last month, top 57, 42 over the last 3 weeks. 93 on the season, reflecting that really rough start. When you factor in availability, he has actually a top 50 rank on the season. I think some of that, knowing that the money plays and you got a lot of pressure on you. If you're Desmond Bane, the team trades everything for you and you got to do good. I think you stay on the court and you play. That was one of the factors in ranking him so high. So I would say rest of season, top 40 per game value seems completely fair to me. I'm not going to go above and beyond that because I'm not seeing, this implementation that honestly I did question, but I just thought availability would carry the day with Desmond Bane. And you know what? At 50 at the quarter pole or 30% of the way through the season, I'm not that worried about my rank. I think there's still a chance for him to hit that rank. So we will see. And it's definitely buy low territory. I think people are largely disappointed with Desmond Bane 1 week at a top 100 value. These lines aren't jumping off the page, but part of the appeal, especially in roto formats for Desmond Bane, it's the foul shooting. It's the fact that you get so many popcorn stats. You get a few steals, which finally started climbing up the ladder, at least until the last 2 weeks. So you get a lot of good stuff with Desmond Bane. All right, that's enough on Desmond Bane. Let's quickly check in on Goga. Does he need to be on rosters? No, but if you had a top 200 format where 200 plays, absolutely. He's been getting you a steal and a block per game. His rank on the season in 8 cat leagues is top 150. That works as a very back end of the roster center. Jalen Suggs, is he a sell high? Well, at top 40 in 25 minutes per game, dealing with groin injuries. Make sure he gets on the court for one game, but toss an offer over, show the rank, and say, I'll take your top 75 player in return. Better yet, take a top 60 player back in return. This is dangerous territory for Jalen Suggs. And I don't care how good he does. He's done this before, and he's going to leave a mark if you think that he's going to bring you top 40 the rest of the season. You didn't draft him for that, but he's not going to get you that. And I think this per game rank looks so succulent that I think people will jump to sell you a top 75 player for Jalen Suggs. And that's kind of what you got to consider him to be. Even if he's playing better, the injury risk means he's not better than a top 75 in your mind. All right, let's get out of Orlando and let's get down to the Sixers. Adem Bona, is he a drop? Well, if you're in a head-to-head league, yeah, he's probably a drop. If you don't own Andre Drummond, he's probably a drop. If you own Andre Drummond, what you could do with Adem Bona is if you pick him up and you're hoping for the proverbial event, both those big injury-prone older players go down and the young, spry Adem Bona jumps into the mix. What you could do is if you have Andre Drummond, which means try to get Andre Drummond, what you could do is you can add him and then you could drop him. I did that this week. I kept him in a couple places where I don't have center depth. And then in the places where I have a ton of center depth, I dropped him knowing he'll just sit there and be available. And if I don't like what I see on the waiver wire, I just want to bolster the upside equation for my team, I'll bring him back. Nobody's adding Adem Bona right now because he barely plays and is way up there in the blocks rankings for the NBA, which is the draw. And we've all seen this last season. It's just one of these painful things. You can be passive about these upside players and you can wait until they have a big game and everybody and their mother on Twitter is just shouting, "Oh, pick up a Dembona," or you can plan ahead and have that value. And then when people go to the wire and they look to add them, they see that you already have them. Nobody knows when a Dembona is going to be playing 20 minutes per game every single night. Joel Embiid still upright. I got Joel Embiid on an over-under for the rest of the game at like 25 to 29 games. That's going to give a lot of open games for Dembona to play whatever he's going to play. But the big key to his value is when the pivot occurs with the Philadelphia 76ers, and they make it a conscious point to get him involved at a higher level, knowing that they can't get to where they want to go without some stability at the center position. That's when he's going to be good. And that hasn't happened. And credit Andre Drummond for being in the best shape that I've seen him in for the last 5 years. And last game when I saw Andre Drummond get his classic double-double with one block, he was running up and down the court like a young man. And that is, it's great for the Sixers. And I think Sixers fans already know that they're better with Andre Drummond on the floor than Joel Embiid, and it's not even close. That's been your Philadelphia 76ers center update. And yes, Andre Drummond is a hold the rest of the season. It doesn't matter. If he's injured, you can drop him. But there's no scenario at all where you're going to drop Andre Drummond. Quentin Grimes, a B150 darling, very good this last week, top 25, top 75 on the season. Really good basketball player. That's all I got for you. I just knew he would be able to cut through it all. VJ Edgecombe, a little bit better this week, top 90 instead of the top 110 he had fallen to. He had about a month at top 140, some injuries in there, some minute restrictions. It's a buy low moment for VJ Edgecombe any way you slice it, and his talent is off the charts. Kelly Oubre is pretty interesting because he's got about a week back from being day-to-day is my guess. He was shooting around with teammates when media was available, so he's not like dead. You know, if that injury was really super bad, I think he would be not around and not, in these shoot-around scenarios playing basketball. Now, he's not wearing the jerseys of the second team or the first team. He's just kind of in his own workout clothes. So that's a little bit of a clue that he's not quite there yet. But look, you're going to get an update that's going to be like Kelly Oubre is going to be, questionable or doubtful for the next game. And people go, hey, do I want Kelly Oubre on my team? Top 80 to 90 guy, had about a top 50 stretch there for a little bit. And granted, there are a lot of players in here. Paul George is back. There's a lot going on with personnel, but he's part of the reason that they were winning. And I don't think they forgot that one bit. I would rank him or value him at top 90 or maybe top 100 when he gets back on the floor. If you're in a 150-player league, that plays. If you're in a 200-player league, that's pretty damn good. So you want to get ahead of the curve when that update comes in and everybody else is running. You'll already be there. Let's get to the Phoenix Suns. My guy, Colin Gillespie, a top, 78 per game on the season, top 50 by totals. People do a disservice to folks calling him like an injury replacement or a guy that's not going to be good when other players get back. They don't think that in Phoenix. And if you had eyes and you watched the film from last season, you had eyes and you watched the film from this season, you would be thinking about him as like the next Austin Reeves, not slow playing the add drop analysis. You would just have him on your team from day one. We love it. Let's go. Devin Booker, is there a buy low here? Yeah, there's a buy low on Devin Booker. I think people are kind of scared about Devin Booker, and I also think that this injury helps feed that fire, and all the accolades are going to the Gillespies and the Grayson Allens, and hell, even Mark Williams is getting good press. You got Villain One. Who's Villain One's name? I'm forgetting Villain One's name. Somebody help me with Villain One. But everybody's getting the news. Everybody's getting the news in Phoenix. Sorry, I might have blacked out there. Dylan Brooks. He has a name. And I actually like Dylan Brooks now, around the league. A guy that's kind of basically a dirty player. People like Dylan Brooks. They like the antics, and they like the fantasy value as well. He's been about a top 75 guy for the most part, up and down and injuries and all the different things. Phoenix has all sorts of fantasy value right now. But Devin Booker's not getting any of those headlines. Buy low on Devin Booker. I think at worst he gives you top 40 when he gets back. More than likely, eventually some of this pendulum swings back over to him with or without Jalen Green involved. Jalen Green eventually will come back as well. Not worried about Colin Gillespie. Not worried about Grayson Allen. Not worried about anybody but maybe like Ryan Dunn and Royce O'Neal sliding into like a 125 for O'Neal, 150 for Ryan Dunn. Mark Williams plays, say, 2/3 of the games. He's going to have a great end of season rank. Hell, even Devin Booker, if he produces at a top 40 level and he just stays upright, I'm happy with that. I didn't really want to draft Devin Booker in the second round, but if you draft Devin Booker in the second round, you get top 40 value on the season. He didn't die on you. And so I guess, that's something of a win. But, all these guys are doing so well. And then a question on Grayson Allen. Is he a hold? Yeah, he's a hold. I mean, we're looking at 2 games that are terrible and people are panicking. Over the last month in 6 games, top 60 on the season, top 60 in 15 games. You get a little variation in the minutes per game there. As long as he's healthy, Grayson Allen will be great because they know how to deploy Grayson Allen. I don't know what they were doing last season. They fed him like a linebacker. And then Mike Budenholzer didn't want to play him, and it was injuries. It was like all the stuff that we saw for last year is happening this year. So it's not surprising. He looks spry. He looks like a big, big piece of what they're trying to accomplish with the offense. I love Phoenix. Go Phoenix. Ryan Dunn, I think he's going to be a top 100 play for the foreseeable future. Whether he starts or comes off the bench, it's quiet. It's kind of roto-y numbers, but we love the Phoenix Suns. In Portland, Denny Avdia, is he a second-round player? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you about Denny Avdia. I think Denny Avdia is an all-star. I think he's going to be a perennial all-star. I think that he has a size-speed combo this league doesn't know what to do with. I think he's way better than people know. I know the people in Portland know. I know the people who rostered him in fantasy leagues. They know he's been a first-round play over the last week, 37 minutes a game, 30 points, 11 boards, 10 assists, because he can't be stopped. He's amazing. He's amazing. And at the same time, yeah, the turnovers are bad. And yeah, there's some blemishes to the game. It's like the defensive stats aren't there. It's fine. He'll be a top 30 play for the rest of the year. And he is really, really good at basketball. Donovan Clingan, is he more than a top 100 player? Dipping over the last 5 games. Really good prior to that. It all adds up to his top 90 mark in 8 cat leagues. I think we got to throw out these last few numbers. Yeah, there's some injury risk here. If you want to call him a top 75 player on the season, I'm fine with that. If you want to associate some risk with him, I'm fine with that. But at the same time, if Portland wants to compete and do anything this season, he's got to be on the floor and he's got to be good. So I kind of think that they're going to play him more than rest him. Portland doing stuff. Jeremy Grant, do I trust him? Not really. He's been a top 85 guy on the season. He's got a month down at top 120. Split the difference, call him a top 100 player with issues staying on the floor. He's been good lately, top 50 lately. I don't think I want to invest too heavily in Jeremy Grant. It just doesn't feel like he's a part of their long-term plans. And I'm kind of curious if he physically can actually handle like a top 75 producing role. I think top 100, and if he stays healthy, you'd be happy. Toumani Camara, a lot of people made big bets. I had a big rank on Camara. I actually didn't get him too many places. Everybody was on him. Top 100 on the season, getting a little bit better lately. Still, every time he kind of climbs up, he'll have a little bit of a fallback. Not as involved in the offense. Steals numbers are down, especially this last couple of weeks. Something's happening with him. I think it's the knee. If we can get some clarity on that, that would be great. But I think at this point in time, instead of considering him to be a potential top 50 guy, especially in 9-cat leagues, we got to hover around this top 100 mark and sort of regroup. It has been better lately, but it hasn't been good enough lately to see if we can get past that and into the upside range. We've had a Time Lord sighting. He has been blocking and stealing the ball, playing in 7 out of the last 11 games, averaging 18 minutes a game. If you need a center and he is upright and announced to be playing in a game, give him a look. Sacramento Kings, Maxime Reynaud. I talked about him a lot in the prior shows, but basically he's a top 110 to 135 guy over the last 5 games in 22 minutes per game. When we look at his numbers overall, the one thing that we can basically kind of boil this all down to is in 25 minutes per game, he's going to get you value in sort of like the top 70 to 90 range. Now, this is with Domantas Sabonis out. So if he falls back into the late rounds with Sabonis, the dips will be, a little bit deeper. They'll be in the like 150, maybe even 175 range. That'll be when you'll be tempted to cut, but if he gets 25 minutes per game without Sabonis and let's say Sabonis gets traded or whatever happens there, that value, that top 100 to 125 range, that will be there. And if he gets 30 minutes per game and they lean into him and or Sabonis is gone, you're talking about a player who could possibly get, top 90, top 70, depending on your format. And that's awesome. I mean, this guy was off the radar for the start of the season. Sacramento clearly turning the page. They want to get some pub out of their good, pick and all of the things. And he just, once they want to do something in Sacramento, they start telegraphing it. They've already started telegraphing that with him. So it looks like he's got a 25-minute role going forward. And it's not like Drew Eubanks is good enough to compete with him right now. I do believe that Reyno beats him even with the rookie flaws. And so that means he's just going to get a clear path to minutes. And I had him in the waiver wire column. You can go check that out over at sportsethos.com. I had him ranked 4th for what it's worth. Zach LaVine, is there a bounce back coming? Yes, there's going to be a bounce back. He's going to get benched. He's going to pout. He's going to do these things every once in a while, but eventually it will all come around. And the hope here is that they lose DeMar DeRozan, maybe one other player. And now Zach LaVine, who's probably not able to be traded, can just sit there and fire away at about a top 60 level in 8 cat leagues. He's a top 90 guy with all the blemishes this season. So you can kind of get a sense for where he would go if too many basketballs, or not enough basketballs, I should say, stops being a problem in Sacramento. It's definitely a problem right now. Malik Monk, is he must roster? I kind of think yes, in competitive situations. The rank's not there. That's for he's a top 175 guy on the season. I think what we're looking at here is a top 50 to 100 projection if they turn the page, a la trade DeMar, a la lose another player somehow. It would be great if it was Russell Westbrook at some point, but I don't think that's going to happen. All sorts of smoke around, possibly going for Jonathan Kuminga. That tracks. When the Kings are doing something that's not smart, that tracks. Nobody in Golden State's sad that they're losing Jonathan Kuminga. So nothing against the guy, but, you don't build your team around him. You don't trade assets for him and all that good stuff. Kuminga not eligibly traded until January 15th. So if that thing starts really percolating, and if everybody in the building knows it's going to happen, you can expect that the Kings will be annoyed with that for the next week. Dennis Schroeder out, and maybe they are holding him. I don't know if he's eligible to be traded by the 15th. I think he's a 15th guy as well. Keegan Murray available. I didn't think that right trap muscle was going to keep him out. That's a large muscle, not really something you would expect to keep him out of a game. All right, let's see. Keegan Murray, how high am I on him rest of season? Well, he's a top 40 guy right now, getting a ton of minutes. His defensive stats are up. I do think that there's a question about whether his defensive role will stay the same when Domantas Sabonis returns, if he takes up different real estate on the court. So that's one way he can experience some value loss. Obviously, if they stop keeping him as the man, which right now he is, quote, the man in Sacramento. And speaking of telegraphing, when you walk by the arena, you get more Keegan Murray pictures than you've ever seen before. So that transition's occurred. I think if he loses value due to defensive numbers falling off and or a role reduction, I don't see it getting outside of the top 75 range. So if you drafted early on Keegan Murray, you won. Top 50 would be a pretty good expectation. But if it all goes well, because he has the potential for defensive numbers, efficiency, and high-end scoring and rebounding and all of the things, I mean, theoretically, he could be a top 30 guy. That's amazing. It's amazing. Keon Ellis, is he safe to drop? Will he be a value at some point this season? Yes, he's safe to drop. And I'm a little concerned he's taken on an injury somewhere, or we just don't know what's up with that. Also, I think the team might have broken him, like not even kidding. He's so tentative in relation to past versions. And with the explosion dip of even just a little bit, it's not great. I think he's in his head a little bit, but also just independent of that, if he was at the same level as he was in previous seasons, I would say it's safe to drop in the sense that they're completely stupid in Sacramento. Like they have no idea what this guy is worth. Every team in the league has called on him, and it still hasn't rung a bell for them. Like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. So I don't think they get it in Sacramento. Not breaking any news there. Westbrook, I think you just keep an eye on him, make sure that in an 8-cat league that he's rostered. Dennis Schroeder, I don't know if he's involved in any trade stuff or if he's just hurt, but I think that dude's pissed off that he signed in Sacramento. For the Spurs is De'Aaron Fox, a second-round value, as I sort of speed it up here as we get to the end here. I do believe he's a second-round value going forward with or without Wemby. So good news there if you drafted De'Aaron Fox. Dylan Harper, I think he's not getting probably the respect he deserves in fantasy leagues. I think he will cruise at a late-round value just based on his own talent and the team's willingness to develop that talent. Let's get out of San Antonio. Let's get to Toronto, where Scotty Barnes is having a top 15 season in 8 cat leagues. Is he a lock to go top 15 the rest of the way? I will tell you if he's healthy, yes. So you can factor that into your evaluations. I feel comfortable with the level he's producing. I feel comfortable with his role. If another player comes back in a trade, we can revisit that. But chances are, I think he and Brandon Ingram have their roles. I think Emmanuel quickly has his role. I think whatever they bring back will be more tertiary, and we'll just have to see what that looks like. I don't think anybody's trading anybody big for RJ Barrett, especially not with knee stuff going on. As far as Emmanuel quickly goes, he's finally producing in the top 50 to 60 range, where he was kind of expected to produce. I don't know, and I say that a little bit lightly because there was some falling off for Emmanuel quickly in drafts, though he didn't fall off that far. Top 70 on the season. He's good. He's fine. I think he's going to be at minimum top 70. He could have a top 50 push in him at some point, especially if something happens to one of the other guys. Right now, he's questionable with an illness for tonight's game, but he's right on schedule. He's fine. Let's get to Utah. We have Ace Bailey having a little bit of a dip, mostly good though for the last 2 to 3 weeks. I think you have a late round value expectation with some mid round upside, with the ups and downs of being a rookie and being in Utah. As evidence, he had a dud just this last week, but mostly, and he did well against OKC. He had 13 points, 4 assists, 5 cash counting stats in 32 minutes. So he's done well to hold on. You know, when things go bad for a young player, they can kind of lose it a little bit. Yusuf Nurkic, I think folks can drop him at any point in time. I don't think that he's going to be like some beacon of value in the Utah Jazz front court, just serviceable at this point. Question on Keontae George. If I was drafting today, rest of the season, how high would I draft him? Well, he's a top 40 guy on the year in 33 and 2/3 minutes. Lots of points. Decent field goal percentage. When he was shooting 38% a season and even a little bit before that, we always wondered would he ever get there, and he got there. Now, I think he might be a bit of a handful. That game he had like 0 points. I think he probably had a tantrum. It's just my guess. I don't have any reporting, obviously, but I just it felt like something wasn't right there. But he's shown a proclivity to bounce back in those situations, and that's worth a lot for a young player. And there's no stopping him in Utah. Nobody's already stepped up and said, "Hey, Keontae, can you not take 16 shots a game?" He's got the ultra green light. They kind of want to see where this goes. They're not looking at Isaiah Collier. They're not doing anything else but Keontae George right now. I do think there's some potential to fall off with a field goal percentage if this team gets really, really bad. I think he could fall into the 42 range. I think that would take him down to like top 60. So maybe top 50, top 60. But this is a guy who's young. He's healthy. He's going to play the rest of the season. You take that evaluation, you pin it to the fact that he's likely to play the rest of the way. Even if they're tanking, they might play him the rest of the way. So unless something weird happens with a draft, or probably with a trade, I think he is at worst top 40 going forward. And so what a great thing if you were able to draft him in the like 75 to 80 range. Kyle Filipowski finally got his name in lights with this last game. 21 points, 10 boards, 3 steals, 2 assists, and a triple for a classic Kyle Filipowski line. Of course, Lauri Markkanen was off. Now, that's fine. I mean, it was one game. He's got a week of top 100 value, a week of, or probably 2 weeks of top 140 value. So he's kind of getting out of like, I wouldn't call it a slump. I'd just call it like a 175 month where the numbers were good, but not great, not enough to climb up and over the mark. And also low minutes, 23 to 25 minutes. He's been averaging 30 minutes per game in this most recent stretch. Basically, once you get rid of Nurk, and once you get rid of Kevin Love, he will be a consistent top 100 player every night. So those are 2 really likely things to happen with Kyle Filipowski. And then every good development after that starts leading back to top 50, which is where he was producing at the end of last season. So that's the story there. I think it's must-add territory, and you got to kind of just deal with whatever you got to deal with over the next month or so to get to the good stuff. Speaking of the good stuff, Lauri Markkanen, top 30 on the season, starting to fall back to where, I had him ranked in the B150, which is in the 30s. And that was on the basis of getting some pretty poppy numbers and then playing, a little bit more than people were accustomed to. So Lauri Markkanen, I had him on a ton of teams, and I didn't feel good about it at the time, but I just had to kind of go where my gut took me. He's been a top 55 player over the last week, top 90 over the last 2 weeks. All the efficiency starting to slip. I don't think there's a problem with Lauri Markkanen here. I think that what happens with shooters is they go through slumps, and we're in the middle of one right now. And as far as the value goes, I would rate him at top 30 going forward. I think you get as far as like a prediction about what he will produce. I think asking him to be an early round guy was way too much, or probably a super early, like top 20, top 15. It's too much. I think 30 is good for him. And then assess the risk. So if you have Lauri Markkanen, of course you're trying to sell high, but like in terms of what you want to get back, I want my top 30 producer who's got injury risk to bring me back top 40 or top 50 value on somebody who's solid. So like his teammate, Keontae George. All right, let's get to the last team, which has got the best players. Oh my God, if you stayed to the end, you get Justin Champagnie and Tristan Vukcevic talk for days. Champagnie, longtime followers know. They know that my affinity for him is basically the stat set and to fly up the ranks. This guy in 20 minutes per game can be a late round value. He's had a spike week over the last 4 games at 22 minutes per game, getting you 12 points, 1 triple, 7 boards, 2 assists, a steal, 1.5 blocks, and somehow he hit over 90% of his foul shots. But that's not the draw here. Basically, when he gets minutes, once Washington decides that he's going to play, and if he gets his 27 minutes, he will be a top 100 value kind of no matter what. And yeah, sometimes they'll stick him in the corner and it'll be a little bit harder to get the numbers than you would like. When they cut him loose, the good things happen. When he's held back, he's just like a late round guy in very low minutes. And that's the upside game that you're playing with him is can he eventually finally get cut loose? The last 3 weeks and 2 weeks, he's been one of the better Washington Wizards players on the team. That doesn't say much about Washington, but he's already at the front of the line in terms of fantasy value. And in 6 games, 9 points, about a half a 3, 6 boards, 2.17 combined defensive stats, good field goal percentage. If he figured out the foul line, that will be big news because that's not something we bake into the cake with Justin Champagnie. So I got him as kind of quasi must add. Like, I think you need to go into this with eyes wide open. Like, if they say, Chris Middleton, you're the man. If some of these, secondary players like the Corey Kisperts and the Trey Johnsons, they come back and make things a little tighter. Like, there's a way this falls apart, but you don't wait around on Justin Champagnie to become obviously good and then compete against everybody with a waiver wire priority or a big fab bid. You do it when you get the set wave a week before. And you see Justin Champagnie as he's starting to heat up. They're starting to turn and pivot and get out of the Champagnie and Vucevic do not play portion of their season, because that's what the first third of the season is. Those dudes don't play. The second part is hopefully when they play, and the third part is when they play a lot. I had Justin Champagnie ranked crazy high in the B150, and it was one of those things. It's like, crap, it's not going to happen right away, but he still could hit that rank. He's got that much pop in his stat set. So Champagnie, send me your questions at Aaron Bruski. I'm happy to answer your Justin Champagnie questions. As far as Tristan Vukcevic goes, Alexander Sarr, of course, is a big kind of impediment to his value. And I would just say this, with Vukcevic, it's probably the last third of the season and then maybe the last 50% of the season for him to really, truly stay above the cut line and be a player that you really, really like to roster. That said, he flung an over the back pass the other day to the corner and really highlighted this guy can shoot. He can dribble for a big man. He can kind of make plays for a big man. Defensively, he's not dead on arrival like a lot of big men are. So he does a lot of things. I think if it was not Washington, I think if it was a team that was competitive and trying to play the best people at all times, he would get a lot more playing time. And with about 25 to 27 minutes per game, he can be easily inside the top 150 and start to flirt with top 100 value. And so Vukcevic, what did I rank him over the weekend? I don't have that. I remember my number 12 overall pickup for Tristan Vukcevic. And unless you guys want to ask me about Keyshawn George, who I will not be selling high on, and I would tell you guys, if you got spooked with the bad shooting, you need to buy low. That is going to do it for this show. I'm going to go pass out or something. I don't know. I didn't fall off the table here. Thank you guys. It's been a fun show. I really appreciate you guys joining me for a 2-hour behemoth episode. We wanted to try a new format, and I think this is going to be good. I think we're going to kind of maybe tweak this out a little bit so it's not 2 hours, but today you guys got a whole lot. Thank you guys for showing up. This has been Fantasy NBA Today, the Bruski Breakdown Edition, presented by FanDuel. You guys have a great night tonight.